Good afternoon. I call to order the Knox County Commission meeting for Monday, January 27th. Seated to my right is Vice Chairwoman Kim Frazier. To my left, to my right, sorry, is Mike Moyers, our Law Director. Seated to my left is Ms. Kim Ellis and Ms. Haley Evans. I don't see any elected officials in here. I do see Dr. Ryswick walked in, I think. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Commissioner Rawls.
Present.
Commissioner Durrett.
Here.
Commissioner Oster.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson.
Here.
Commissioner Russell.
Present.
Commissioner Hill. Here. Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Fox. Here. Commissioner Jay.
Here.
Commissioner Frazier.
Present.
11 members are present.
Thank you. And if we could call our junior commissioners also.
Junior Commissioner Powell.
Here.
Junior Commissioner Zanders.
Present.
Junior Commissioner Tarbox.
Here.
Junior Commissioner Patel.
Present.
Junior Commissioner Whitcomb.
Present.
Junior Commissioner Broussard.
Present.
Junior Commissioner Price.
Here.
Junior Commissioner Kingsford.
Here.
Junior Commissioner Davis. Junior Commissioner Graves.
Here.
And Junior Commissioner Greenwood.
Present.
Thank you. We do have our junior commissioners with us. This is their first commission meeting night, and so I want to say welcome. Hope you guys enjoy it and learn a lot. Also, to everybody out there, Happy New Year. This is our first time we've met also. I will now turn over to Commissioner Thompson for the devotion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll go ahead and admit I am no Sunday school teacher, so bear with me. I got to thinking about our role as commissioners and I guess the calling that we have filled here. I don't think any of us are necessarily here for the money. So it's a calling, and looking at the book of Haggai, through the prophet Haggai, the Lord rebuked the Israelites for allowing the temple to lie in ruin and instructed them to continue the rebuilding. If you look at this, the Israelites here had basically the temple had been torn down, so they were instructed to rebuild the temple. But in the book of Haggai recounts the messages from the Lord to the remnant of Israel who returned to Jerusalem's ruin during the reign of King Darius. The procrastination and misguided priorities led to focusing on themselves while leaving the temple unfinished. They did the foundation and stopped, indicating a problem in their relationship with the Lord. The result was a paradox. No matter how hard they worked, they still struggled with even the basic needs. The remnant responded obediently when they recognized the divine origin of Haggai's chastisement and their economic instability. The assurance of God's presence stirred their hearts and motivated them to begin the work. If you look at this, they forgot their calling. They remembered why they were there, but they got so far and they got comfortable. In some ways, they got complacent. And looking at the role that we fill, there's a lot of things that we struggle with. We have to work through not all that's fun, but don't let your complacency and your comfort get in the way of your calling, because once they realized and were re-engaged with their calling and got back to why they were supposed to do what they were doing, they finished the temple. And so we've had a lot of work that we're doing. There's a lot of work that previous commissions laid the groundwork for. We need to make sure that we finish what we've started. So that is my devotional. If I guess we do a prayer. Okay. Dear Lord, thank you for bringing us here to this day safely and giving us a full agenda of for the people of Knox County. Please give us wisdom and thoughtfulness as we prudently and intentionally go forth with the decisions that we make, knowing that the decisions we make now and in future meetings will forever change the trajectory of our county and our home, that we do it with mindfulness to your will be done. And thank you very much. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. I'll now turn it over to Commissioner Russell for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the
Thank you. If it's at the pleasure of the body, after we set the agenda, we'll entertain a motion on the education and general consent calendars, honorary resolutions and presentations, and then the rest of the agenda. The amendments to the agenda are as follows. Additions 19, 26, 30, and 33. I'll say that one more time. Additions 19, 26, 30, and 33. Defer to February 40, 41, 44, and 46. Again, 40, 41, 44, and 46. Withdrawals 37. Non-consent 29, 30, 34, 35, 36, 42, 43, and 45. One more time. 29, 30, 34, 35, 36, 42, 43, and 45. Do we have any discussion?
Motion to set the agenda as amended?
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Durrett, second by Commissioner Frazier. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, the chair will now entertain a motion to approve the education general consent calendars.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Jay, second by Commissioner Durrett. All in favor? All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item on the agenda.
Item number 29, R-25-1-101, recognizing the Sunday tradition, Moles Singing Convention.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Frazier, second by Commissioner Hill. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Commissioner Frazier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, so back in November, in a hospital waiting room, I struck up a conversation with a gentleman, Mr. David Hayes. He's the owner of David's Abbey Carpet. He's here with us. We were both surrounded by friends and family, anxiously awaiting news on a loved one. I can't exactly recall how the topic landed on music, but it did, and we exchanged stories about growing up in a small community church, singing from the red hymnal and listening to traveling gospel singing groups on Sunday afternoons. That's when he told me about Mr. Tommy Spencer, and he entered the discussion. And I learned more about the history of the Moles Singing Convention and their recent recognition by Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. So as the daughter of a song leader, not a choir director, but a song leader, I wanted to celebrate their 70 years of bringing traditional gospel music to East Tennessee and really to America. So now I will read the resolution. Okay. This paper's big. Whereas it is our privilege to recognize those historic broadcast programs that have uplifted, edified, and inspired Tennesseans for generations, and whereas one such program is the Moles Singing Convention, which celebrated its 70th anniversary last year, making 7 decades of bringing gospel music to East Tennessee. And whereas currently hosted by Tommy Spencer under the fitting moniker of Sunday Tradition, the program was created by Reverend Jacob Basil Mole, often referred to as J. Basil, and his wife, Elizabeth Mole, known as Lady Mole. And whereas begun as a radio show in 1942 and syndicated in 1954, the Moles first brought Southern gospel music to local audiences on WBIR TV and later on WVLT TV. The show also aired on Chattanooga's WRGP TV when the station went on air in 1956. And whereas initially a nightly show, Moles Singing Convention settled into a Saturday noontime slot from the years 1960 until 1975, eventually landing on Sunday mornings. The show enjoyed a long run of loyal sponsors, including Saudi Men's Shop, Elm Hill Meats, Mayfield Milk, and JFG Coffee. And whereas during the broadcast, the Moles would introduce live or film performances from the Spear family, the Blackwood Brothers, the Chuck Wagon Gang, and the La Fevres, to name a few. They would also host live multi-act concerts at Memorial Auditorium, and they sold countless albums and songbooks, and at their peak, presented 75 live concerts, primarily in the Southeast, every year. And whereas Mole Singing Convention was syndicated on nighttime Clear Channel megastation WWL 870 in New Orleans, Louisiana, and consequently became beloved among nighttime truck drivers across the United States. And whereas in the later years, the Moles continued their show in their home base of Knoxville, showing up each week for audiences until the time of their passing, Jay Basil in 2006 at the age of 91, and Lady Mole in 2012 at the age of 85, at which point their daughter, Charlotte, led the show. And whereas after Charlotte Mole's passing in 2013, Tommy Spencer took over as host of the show, and in honor of the Mole family, renamed it Sunday Tradition. In 2015, Sunday Tradition teamed up with Clark Beasley, Executive Vice President of the National Quartet Convention, as co-hosts. And whereas today, the show airs from Knoxville on Sundays at 7 a.m. on WVLT2 and at 4 p.m. on the Knoxville Fox affiliate, and has the distinction of being the longest running locally produced television show in America. And whereas over the years, the Mole Singing Convention Sunday Tradition has been duly honored by many, including President Jimmy Carter, who appeared on the show, Governor Lamar Alexander, Congressman John Duncan, and Congressman Tim Burchett, and Mr. and Mrs. Mole have both been inducted into the Southern Gospel Hall of Fame. And whereas Mr. Spencer is an able torchbearer who proudly continues the tradition that the Moles started over 70 years ago, keeping the rich heritage of Appalachian Southern gospel music alive in East Tennessee. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Commission of Knox County as follows. The Commission of Knox County hereby recognizes and honors the Mole Singing Convention Sunday Tradition and hosts Tommy Spencer for his continuance of and contributions to this legendary program. Be it further resolved that this resolution is to take effect from and after its passage as provided by the Charter of Knox County, Tennessee, the public welfare requiring it. Please help me celebrate this tremendous accomplishment.
You know, I'm the host of the show, and I've never been speechless. But I want to thank County Commissioner Frazier for honoring our show. We're so proud of it. And thank these two fine gentlemen right here that take care of us and make me look good, which is really hard. So, I'm really speechless. But thank you so much, Commissioners, for honoring such a great show.
And I'm going to put Tommy on the spot for a minute. He sings Proud to Be an American better than anybody I know. Can you do just one little snippet? Where's Tommy? Get over here.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah. one snippet.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was awesome. Next item, please.
Item number 30, Resolution R-25-1-102, honoring the Gibbs Ruritan Club in celebration of their 75th anniversary and continued service to the community.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jay, second by Commissioner Thompson. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Commissioner Jay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my fellow commissioners for approving this honorary resolution. And I want to thank Commissioner Thompson, who represents the district in which this story has been such a vital part of our community for now 75 years. I am proud to call myself a member of this club, only because they'll have me. And they have welcomed me with open arms and always fed me well. And before I took the journey back across the county, I'm welcomed or joined here today from members of the Gibbs Ruritan Club who have a storied past but a incredible impact. I do not think that Gibbs would be Gibbs without this club. I do not think that the high school, the middle school, the elementary school, the community would be as rich as it is with personality and resources without this club. And it is one of the few organizations that I have met across Knox County that you can say they are part of the founding of Knox County. They may not have come right at the beginning of our charter and our government, but they certainly have been the fabric of it in the northeast part. And I encourage you to come to one of their clubs or to come to their parade, which is about one of the best Christmas parades of all time. So I have an honorary resolution today to honor the folks standing behind me. Whereas on January 3rd, 1950, Max Clenenden, our agricultural teacher and future principal at Gibbs High School, along with his friend Elmo Johnson from Union County and a member of the Mossheim Ruritan Club, formed the Ruritan Club in the Gibbs community. And whereas the Ruritan National chartered the Gibbs Ruritan Club with the signatures of 27 community leaders and visionaries. From that historic date, 75 years of service to the Gibbs community began and continues uninterrupted today. And whereas early on the morning of November 22nd, 1950, community residents were awakened to the newscast that Gibbs School was burning. The second such time in as many decades, this catastrophic event emboldened the Gibbs Ruritan Club members as they helped to build the football field, erect fencing, install the first lighting system, and purchase equipment for the football team. And whereas in the 1960s, 30 acres of land was purchased from the Hammer family for the club to establish a new community park called the Gibbs Ruritan Park, and included lighted baseball and softball fields, the first of its kind, a children's playground, concession stands, restrooms, and a temporary clubhouse which stands today. Whereas over the coming years, events at the park included ball games, tractor pulls, fish fries, fairs, circuses, and a horse show. And whereas over the coming decades, improvements to the Gibbs Ruritan Park included installation of soccer fields, a tractor pull track. We need to get the tractor pull back. I don't know, that sounds really fun. Tennis courts, a picnic shelter with tables, and accommodations for 100 people. And whereas in the 1990s, construction of the current, more modern clubhouse was constructed with an investment of $500 from 200 community donors. Let that sink in for anyone who's ever raised money. Whereas in the 2000s, the maintenance and upkeep responsibilities of the park had grown so much and so much more difficult, and the club turned to Knox County to take over the ownership of the park while maintaining operation of the community center building, thus forming a great partnership. Whereas an additional partnership with Boy Scout Troop 500 was established to assist with the Spence Nicely property, having been left to the Gibbs Ruritan Club after the passing of Mr. Nicely, whereby Eagle Scout projects were added, including a walking trail, signage, benches, a bridge, picnic tables, outdoor amphitheater, and other amenities for camping and outdoor gatherings. And whereas the club's mission has evolved to focus on supporting Gibbs athletic programs, academic programs, offering 4 $1,000 academic scholarships each year to eligible graduating seniors, Needing Families program, BSA Troop 500, library box, community garden, and running the acclaimed annual Christmas parade. They do it all. And whereas the Gibbs Ruritan Club, after 75 years, continues to carry on the efforts to assure a promising future for the Gibbs community. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Commission of Knox County as follows. The Commission of Knox County hereby honors the Gibbs Ruritan Club on their 75th anniversary and celebrates their continued service to the community. Be it further resolved that they are awesome, and we're going to give them a copy of this resolution. Please give it a round of applause to our members.
First of all, we're all really glad to be here, and thank you for thank you for having us. But those of us that you see here, we're not the ones that started it. Some of our fathers, some of our grandfathers, uncles started it back in 1950, and what we hope to do, and I think they would all agree with me, what we hope to do is just to carry forward the good work that they began back in 1950. And if I have time for just one more brief story. He mentioned, and it's in here, I'm glad it's in here, that one of the things that we did was to start the Ruritan Ballpark. And I don't know if you all know a guy named Morgan Wallen. Anybody know him? Well, he went to Gibbs. He grew up in Gibbs, and before he planned on being a famous country music singer, he was an excellent ball player at Gibbs. He played at high school, but he started out playing on that Ruritan Park field when he was a little boy, and the sad end of that story is, it's not sad because it worked out well for him. He had planned to go to college on a baseball scholarship because he was really good at it when he played at Gibbs in high school. And but in his senior year, he tore some kind of a ligament that couldn't be fixed. And so that's when he turned to country music, which, as you know, worked out pretty well for him. But anyway, and one more thing about that story is that not too long ago, he gave some money to the Gibbs Ruritan Park because, excuse me, because he remembered playing ball on the field that the Ruritan Club, our fathers and uncles, built for him to play on. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Jay. Thank you, commissioners and junior commissioners. I was glad, I read about that you were going to be here in the newspaper. So thank you all.
If you guys would join us for a picture, please, the commissioners.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item.
Item number 31, presentation of the quarterly Fire and Technical Rescue Committee report by Director Brent Seymour.
Mr. Seymour, if you'll give your name and county of residence, please.
Brent Seymour, Knox County. I'm certainly not going to sing because there's no way I could top what we heard. Just like to thank Commission for letting us do the report again this quarter. You can see there that as pretty much normal, the north end of the county is our busiest response area and continues to be so. That's not surprising at all. About 55% of our run calls are medical calls, and that's fairly normal nationwide, depending on the system. Folks may think it's a little bit more than that, but 55%, typically 55 to 60-ish on their medical out of all of our responses, excuse me, and then the other fire, and then just other type responses. Our call volume's holding pretty steady, as it has been the last several months. The last quarter, pretty busy for our agencies. October is a hugely busy time for our fire agencies. We like to promote fire safety year-round, obviously. That's part of our business, but October especially being Fire Prevention Month, that's huge. We like to get out and promote the smoke alarm campaign. We like to get out and promote exit drills in the home. We like to get out and promote the close the door, sleep with your door closed. Data shows overwhelmingly that your chances of survival in a residential structure fire are much better if your door is closed where you're sleeping with a fire somewhere in your house. We talked to over 10,000 folks this last 3 months and tried to spread that safety message. Carnes took the quarter to look at their special operations skills, honing particularly on vehicle extrication, but there's a lot involved in that special operations arena when you get into where people get stuck that typically they shouldn't be stuck in trenches and collapses in vehicles after an accident, things like that. So that takes a special level of training, a special level of effort. And we like to hone those skills and every opportunity we get. Knox County Rescue, still the same thing, looking at and honing their search and rescue operations. They had a class where they certified several folks in emergency medical responder. That's the basic level of medical response. So you have EMR, emergency medical responder, then you jump to EMT, advanced EMT, paramedic, and then critical care paramedic. So hopefully these folks will get the itch there and pursue a career, but because we're having a hard time recruiting folks for fire and rescue services and law enforcement as well. So everything we can, we try to get into the schools and start young and try to get those folks over to our side. Rural Metro this year, or this quarter again, really hit the community during Fire Prevention Month. Got out there and had a lot of they were able to do a lot of the open houses and let the citizens come in and look at the equipment, talk to the firefighters, even shared some ice cream with them. I think Captain Bagwell had his ice cream maker in the back of his truck and he ferried it around town for the whole month of October there. Trying to just introduce the communities to the folks that are going to be at their emergencies and their time of need. And then, of course, Seymour. Again, a lot of our focus on this report is on our fire prevention effort. They were out in the community doing that as well, participated in several events where they could share that fire safety message and then put a new vehicle in service there. You see the picture there on the bottom right is a vehicle that Seymour has been fortunate enough to just recently take possession of. So they can enhance their response capability here in Knox County as well. Just real quick, another thing about that fire prevention, I seen Chief Amber and Chief Lyon come in earlier, just about our fire investigation unit who also tries to promote that safety message. Tennessee routinely is in the top 10 in fire fatalities in the nation. It's not a top 10 list we want to be on. 2024, we were 9th. I think in the past we've been 11th, but we've moved into the top 10. 89 fire deaths across the state last year out of 76 different incidents. 6 of those occurred in Knox County. That's not a list we want to be on. Our fire investigators, made up of a combination of sheriff's office employees and firefighters in our county agencies, do a great job with the help of Chief Amber and Chief Lyon, and then kind of under the task force members under the direction of the county fire marshal's office. We're doing everything we can to get us out of that top 10 at least, if not in the bottom 10 of that list. We try hard and we appreciate everything our agencies do.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions for Mr. Seymour? Make it easy on you tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Jackson, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Seymour, I just had, you may have heard of in the newspaper, there were some fires in California. I'm making a joke, but, do we train and have plans for, a subdivision going in high winds, going from house to house to house? Because I believe a couple months ago in the Carnes community, there was an incident like that where 3 or 4 houses were damaged. Do we have planning for that?
Yeah, so we do training for that. One of the components you have to look at there too, Commissioner. So we can train for several of those events, but then you get unexpected weather. So I believe that particular day as well, just like in California, obviously not as devastating as what they had in Los Angeles. We had some significant wind gusts there too. So you look at, you train for that, and you train for exposure protection. Life is number one, and you fall down with property conservation as well. But you do look at those exposure protection, if your primary exposure, and that's kind of a wildland urban interface type training. When you roll in and you do your assessment and you have a significant structural loss on one, you're automatically outside of life. You're going to go to the exposure protection. That particular instance you're talking about too, I believe we had wind gusts of 50 to 60 miles an hour there, and it was a quick shift. Minute 2 it was blowing left to right, and minute 5 it was blowing right to left. And even some of those during that incident, some of the equipment that you would use to do that, the wind gusts prevented us. Prevented the fire department from able to deploy that equipment to its full extent, because now you get an aerial device up in the air, you got to worry about significant wind shifts. Those things become unstable. So we do train, but it's hard to replicate some of the weather adversity that you deal with when you get into some of those issues.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the update, and kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Jackson was saying. Watching what happened in California, and then also what happened here in Karnes, when we're looking at zonings and density and the safety of it. Now, obviously, where apartments, condos, townhomes, they all have shared walls. So densely, when houses are close together, I get that. They're not as close as a condo or a townhome. But when we're looking at road widths, parking, driveways, things like that, you can train for the structure part of it. But if you can't get to the fire, that's an issue. How big of an impact do you feel like street parking and all those things impede your ability to get to the emergency?
Well, Commissioner, you look at, so when you, as you well know, when you roll into development, some of those plans roll through the Fire Prevention Bureau. We actually look at the subdivisions, and we look at a new construction, a box store, for instance. Fire code does require a certain type parameter and widths of roads so we can access the entire building. We do look at subdivision entrances. We look at hydrant placement. We look at how you can, you can get where you need to be. If you look at parking on the street and things of that nature, and so as an agency, we identify some of those areas that may be difficult to get to, or may be difficult to, once the emergency occurs. But during development process, we have a pretty good hand out of the fire marshal's office about the way the streets are laid out, hopefully water usage, water supply, things of that nature. So as an agency, as a firefighter, 3 decades riding the back step, the closeness of the structures, the apartments and things like that, that doesn't change. I hate to say that. That doesn't necessarily change the way we operate, because it's just part of our assessment. And if we see an exposure that's, lack of a better term, more exposed than another, that's going to change up some of our tactical decisions that we make, especially as an incident commander. That's one of the things I have to look at when I roll up is what are my resources coming, what are my assets on the truck, and how can I effectively use those assets for the least amount of property damage.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And I'm looking at it from, I guess, a development planning perspective, because I know we have certain side streets where I get concerns from residents where they said, oh, there's too much speeding down our road, but we can't put any speed abatement in because, and the reason given is because we don't want to slow down emergency personnel. How much influence during the development process do you all have to say when this subdivision goes in, the driveways aren't large enough, there's going to be street parking, and if you get street parking on both sides, now it's too narrow to get an engine through, or something like that?
Yes, sir.
How do you all have an opportunity to give that kind of feedback during the development process?
I think it just depends on when we're able to see some of that development. as far as that. We look at some of the streets on the early end, but you're talking about single-family.
Yeah, I'm talking about
homes.
like a subdivision
Right.
and things like,
And-
because, like a good example, and I'm not saying there is an issue in this
Right.
subdivision, but like, Edwards Place, on Thompson School Road, there's a single entrance to the subdivision, so there's one way in, one way out. It's a fairly large development, but the driveways do tend to be smaller in certain aspects of it, and so there is a lot of on-street parking.
Right. And one of the things we look at too is early on in that, we'll look at some of the streets and development and things like that. A lot of your more recent subdivisions, those streets tend to be wide enough. If for some reason you've got a vehicle parked on both sides, as long as we can get the truck between the vehicles to get where we need to be. The thing that you have to remember about single-family dwellings or residential dwellings outside of a condo or an apartment is, once we look at, say, the subdivision street layout, we work with Mr. Snowden and Engineering Public Works, and usually if they have an issue, his folks are great to call over to the office and say, hey, man, how about taking a look at this? But again, once you get to that single-family dwelling, once the street layout gets away from us, there's no fire code involvement in single-family dwellings. So, so we really depend on Director Snowden and his folks, and like, again, they work well with us, and they call, and if, a lot of times they'll catch something before we see it, and they'll say, hey, we just want you guys to be aware of this, so you can tell the responding agencies in this community, here's what's happening.
Sure, thank you. And I agree, Director Snowden's department works very well with a lot of folks, so, yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Frazier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to quickly tell my colleagues that I have asked for reports from the agencies who worked active fires recently. We had some in South Knox and also in West Knox to talk about their experience and possibly some of the challenges that they experience in fighting those fires. So I look forward to hearing their reports at the next Fire and Technical Rescue Committee.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your time. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item number 32, presentation by legal aid on eviction prevention.
Commissioners, also, Commissioner Durrett handed out some forms for us to look at also. If you don't mind stating your name and county of residence, please.
Thank you. I'm Deborah House, and I'm a resident of Knox County, Tennessee. I do have a question. How do we change the slides? Who's driving? Okay, thanks. I just need to let you in that slide. Okay, thank you. I'm Deborah House. I'm the Executive Director of Legal Aid of East Tennessee, and with me this evening are Michael Davis, I'll be back there, who's the Managing Attorney of our Eviction Prevention Program, and Emily Calla, who is one of our staff attorneys. So we're here to talk to you tonight about our Eviction Prevention Program, also called EPP. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we have achieved in the past year and the cost savings that we have seen for individuals, for landlords, for tenants, and for the community. So brief overview. EPP provides legal representation to vulnerable Knox Countyans who are facing eviction. We're lawyers. We represent people who are facing eviction, housing instability, insecurity, and potentially facing homelessness. Our program is highly effective in preventing eviction judgments, and we're going to talk more about that later, about the concept of a judgment and keeping that off your record, and the importance of that is something that only a lawyer can do. We reduce housing instability and the risk of homelessness in our community. We prevent large costs for local government. And the program has been funded for the past 18 months by Knox County through a contract with ARPA or COVID money. That funding is set to end in May of 2025. Next slide, please. So what is eviction prevention and our office? We have a standalone office here in Knox County over on Walker Boulevard, not Walker Springs. We've had people go to the wrong office on occasion. It's over on Broadway just before 640 comes in. We are currently staffed with 5 lawyers and 3 paralegals, again, through funding, through the county, through the ARPA dollars that we are spending. We provide no-cost legal services to those who qualify for our services, and there's an income limit, and that is set by the federal government because it is ARPA money. I think it's 80% of the average area median income. Our primary focus is on preventing eviction judgments, preserving housing stability, and ensuring habitability standards for our clients. And we are the only organization in our community that provides these services and resources. At the bottom of the screen, you will find a quote from General Sessions Judge Chuck Cerny, who hears a large number of the eviction cases every week here in Knox County, talking about the benefits he sees to helping landlords and helping tenants and some of the difference that our program makes from his perspective on the bench as a judge. Next slide, please. So what does eviction prevention mean? Next slide. One thing eviction prevention is not keeping tenants in rental units against the landlord's will or against the law. That is not what we are about at all. Our primary focus is preventing eviction judgments, whether tenants stay or they vacate, because having a judgment on your record is very detrimental, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Eviction prevention is obtaining mutually beneficial agreements through negotiations with landlords. We spend a lot of time, our attorneys, negotiating with landlords' attorneys to have a favorable outcome. A plan for possession of the unit to get it back to the landlord or allow the tenant to stay depending on the circumstances. We account for back rents owed and make repayment plans, and often secure a neutral reference, which is so important when a tenant goes to look for new housing, they don't have a negative reference from the landlord. Next slide, please. So who is at risk for eviction, for eviction in our community? Next slide. So Knox Countyans who are generally at risk are renters experience sharp rent increases. Right now, the average one-bedroom rent for an apartment here in Knox County is over $1,400 a month. And we'll talk in a minute about how that has risen exponentially in the past couple of years. Also at risk, renters experiencing hardship from inflation, elders and disabled on Social Security benefits. Increasingly, we are seeing people working full-time jobs, even 2 jobs. We're seeing people who we would have traditionally considered middle class now facing eviction because of the rising cost of rent and the fact that the wages are not keeping up with that cost. Next slide, please. So housing in Knoxville and Knox County. 53% of our local renters are what we call cost burdened, meaning they spend over 30% of their income on rent, or even severely cost burdened, meaning they spend 50% of their income on rent. Imagine that, spending 50% of your weekly, monthly, annual income on rent. These numbers are significantly above the national average. The chart you see on the left shows Knoxville cost burden versus the U.S. We're approximately 25%, where in the U.S. the average burden is approximately 10%. Next slide, please. So what is a recent local eviction situation? What are we looking at locally? Next slide. Average rent increases. Now this is huge. Ben Bentley, who's executive director of KCDC, looking at 24 and 25, says rents have gone up, depending on bedroom size, between 20 and 30%. This is huge. And particularly he's seeing this in places like South and East Knoxville, becoming much less affordable for renters. Next slide, please. Rents in the Knoxville metro area have risen nearly 56% since 2020, since the pandemic. We all know that the pandemic totally changed the housing market and the landscape in many communities, including ours right here. So 50% raise in rent with only a corresponding 3% raise in wages. And the chart on the right is very demonstrative to me. Average rent has gone up 56%. Average income, 3%. How do you keep up with rent? How do you stay in your home? It's very difficult. Next slide, please. Eviction cases in Knox County have skyrocketed since 2020, since the pandemic. We know that the pandemic totally changed, again, the rental landscape, the eviction landscape. From 2020 to 23, eviction cases increased over 10%. There's an average of 150 cases each week on the court's docket, and our staff here handles a good proportion of those cases every week. Next slide, please. So what happens after court? This is really important. Our attorneys and paralegals go to court. They help people stay housed, negotiate agreements, negotiate settlements, negotiate what we call stay and pays or move out agreements. So what happens when the court's done? Next slide, please. This is where I mentioned the importance of a judgment on a record or not having a judgment. So if the a tenant leaves court without a judgment for possession on their record, it means many things. It improves their choices and freedom about where they live. It improves their ability to access public housing, safe and affordable housing, often allowing a lateral move into very similar housing. So there's very many benefits to not having a judgment on a tenant's record, and that is a lot of what our attorneys focus on, is making sure that tenant does not have that black mark against them on their record. Next slide, please. If they do leave court with a judgment against them, it severely limits their choices They may not access public housing for up to 3 years, forced into substandard housing, may be forced to leave their neighborhood, community. To me, school zone is critically important for children's stability, because once you start flipping schools and being out of school for a period of time, we know what that does to a child's educational advancement and their stability and their security. And drastically increases the risk of homelessness. And we all know the cost of homelessness in our community. Next slide, please. So how does the EPP save costs? Next slide. Through many reasons, and I'm not going to go through each one of them, but EPP saves costs to our court system and ensures fair housing for individuals. And I mentioned already negotiating pay and stay agreements or agreements to vacate. This saves money to the court system, it saves money to landlords, to tenants, to our community. It saves money across the board. Next slide, please. So how effective are we on the EPP program? Next slide, please. You have a handout. This one. There's a one-page summary of our results. As I mentioned, we began funding in November of '23, and this is through December of this year, or of last year, the results that we've seen. We've seen 577 cases come through our door, and that would be about 14 months. 486 of those were evictions. The rest were things like conditions, habitability, security deposit issues, and so on. Of that, 338 cases were adjudicated or resolved by our attorney staff. Of those, 308 cases had a judgment prevented. 91% success rate of our attorneys in what they do, which is very significant. We currently have 148 open cases in our office right now. We've assisted 650 individuals, that's everybody in the household, including, again, significantly, 275 children in a period of 14 months. Next slide, please. We save money for Knox County. A recent study shows that for every dollar invested in our EPP project, there is a return of $6.14. Where do you get that kind of return on your investment? $6.14 for every dollar you invest. So that is very significant. These savings are reflected, and this is on the other handout, the one with this chart on the back. This is a very limited look at the savings. Savings to our educational system, kids who are in school, so the county is getting the school money that they get from the federal government for educating kids. Medical expenses, keeping people out of the ER, other medical expenses, and homeless services. This doesn't account for other potential savings like funding for the police, foster care services, court services, and so on. Next slide, please. So there are other additional benefits to EPP. We're highly effective in preventing homelessness, and I think that's critical. For the amount of money that we spend every year, approximately $600,000, you're getting a great return on your investment in terms of preventing homelessness. We're a well-established program. We link people in our program to other services in the community. We collaborate with many other service providers in the community. We educate the community on housing rights and so on. We ensure habitability standards. So there's so many additional benefits beyond the direct representation. Next slide, please. So looking forward, we continue to work on EPP. We continue to work with the county and others within our community. And again, you have a couple of handouts that show the impact and the importance of the program. And with that, I will open the floor to questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. Quick question for you. How were your efforts funded before this ARPA money? I can see it's about $600,000 from Knox County with the ARPA money, and what will you do if Knox County, who's facing a terrible budget crunch and a debt crisis, doesn't have the money to fund your services? What next?
Okay, so before EPP, we had about one attorney going to court with other funding through our main office downtown. We didn't have a separate office. We didn't have the force and the staff that we do now. As far as sustainability, we are actively working on that as we speak. We're talking with the city, we're talking with the county, the United Way, other funders, trying to cobble together a core of funding to help sustain the project going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate what you all do. This is not, I've spoken in the past, I guess, Commissioner Rawls and I had a couple conversations about what you all do, and it's very valuable to the folks who require your services. In the 8th District, particularly in the Gibbs community, I saw this happen. It was right after 2020. We had a condo community that was owned, the developer who built it basically just owned them. But anyway, they turned around and sold them. He had been renting them out. And after he sold them, he sold it to an investment company who basically bought the entire development or condo community. And immediately the rents went up. It wasn't a little bit. It was a lot. U-Haul made bank on that little community because with the lease renewals, it went up. So they honored what they were currently paying, but they could not renew because I guess they knew that prices were going up, and they would just sit there and wait for them to go up, and people could find someplace else to live if they couldn't pay them. And we talked about COVID, or you mentioned COVID. It wasn't because they lost their job. It wasn't that they took a pay cut. It was just they bought it, they increased it, and at the time the rents were heavily inflated for the time, and now it seems what they increased it to seems normal. We've also had a builder come in and finish out a development. And those are income-based properties, so there's not necessarily any evictions going on there. It's income-based, but from a I guess a legislative body, what do we need to be watching for that you see moving forward to, I guess, mitigate some of this and head it off before they get to you all?
I would like to ask my colleague to address that, because Michael, he's boots on the ground day to day, and he's much more familiar with this particular aspect.
Yes, so what you're describing is something a lot of people experience all over the county, all over the state, and the country even. This is why our program is so effective, I think. Even though we can't legally prevent a landlord in Tennessee from increasing rent, like you're talking about, if they come into a property or if they've owned the property for some amount of time. But with the team that we've got, I liken it a lot of times to an emergency room. We can't always be, the family physician approach just due to the lack of resources. We'd love to have that many lawyers that we could do that we could get out ahead of a lot of things, that we could address this, we could do more outreach, more education to the community. But for those people going through an eviction, when they get served that detainer warrant, they need a place to turn to. They need answers for this because there's no guarantee for a lawyer for this kind of civil case. It's not a criminal case where you have that right. So we're there to help provide what people are looking for, those answers. What can I do here? Can I negotiate with the landlord? Is there anything that we can do about the price? We can answer those questions. We provide that emergency room approach for people going through that. And people need that. They want to know that there are answers out there because it's a scary thing to go through eviction court all by yourself. Mm-hmm. And so we're there to provide that. We're just hoping to keep that because the last thing that we want is to be back down to what Deb was talking about, just 1-2 attorneys. Mm-hmm. That's field medicine at that point. That's triage. We want to keep the kind of, at least the level of services that we've got, if not expanding that. Because we see a lot more people going through this as it creeps into the middle class, into people that never expected to be in this position, like you're referencing there in your community. So that's what's important about having this team, having it go forward, so we keep these kinds of services in Knox County.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Sir, do you mind to give your name?
Yep, Michael Davis. I'm a Knox County resident as well.
Thank you. We just need that for the record.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Rawls.
Thank you guys for the presentation. Either can answer this. Are there any, can you name the top neighborhoods and areas in which this is happening? I'm in Commission District 1, which is the most city of our county, but we hear that this is happening in Commissioner Thompson's area, and he's probably the most rural of
the county. So can you give me like top 3 areas that this is happening, that we see significant evictions?
Sure. And now this is, we have gotten some data from this, from the University of Tennessee. When they've studied this, they actually have put it into a heat map. From the most recent study that they did, the Inskip area was a very hot spot. East Knoxville, pockets of north, and particularly northwest Knoxville, as you just fairly close to downtown, and then South Knoxville as well, certain areas there. So we really don't have many areas that are untouched, and that's not to leave out places in West Knoxville, that we do get cases from there. There's no part of the county that's untouched by this, because we're just in an unprecedented level of rent rise, and it's a consequence of so much demand and a supply that is not that elastic. You can't just snap your fingers and build housing, especially not for $600,000 a year. You can't even put together the kind of rental assistance programs or barely even homeless services programs for $600,000 a year. Not that we're competing with any of that. We just think that this is, we know now after we've been up and running, this is a crucial component to what's going on there as these things rise. And like I said, that's older data. I think that data comes from around 2020. One of the good things about our program is it allows another avenue to get more data, to do deeper studies into what's going on in Knox County and in our communities here, which is just another invaluable thing. We could get a lot better data if we can just have the resources to keep studying it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've been reading the book Evicted, and if anybody has not read it, it's a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel about, the state of affairs throughout the country, but it specifically talks about Milwaukee. And a couple of the points that I took away from this book, the author points out about the disparities in, the quality of the apartment or the quality of the house, yet the cost of the house is not any different than a a wealthier area of the area in Milwaukee. For example, it might be $2,000 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment, but it's only $1,900, just $100 savings in order to get a very low quality apartment. And then also the second thing that the book talked about was how landlords find it more profitable to crank up the rent rate to almost 80%, in the examples I used in the book, 80% of their income, to where the actual business model is to evict the person, because what they do is that they get 1 month's rent, they get the last month's rent, and then they get a security deposit, and their intention is that the person will have to be evicted in 6 months. And then therefore, it's a much more profitable thing for them. They evict, and then they bring somebody else in. It reminds me very much of Upton Sinclair's novel, The Jungle, where they did the exact same thing in the early 20th century. Do we see that here in Knox County?
In a word, yes. We've seen that for some time. I think, Commissioner Jackson, you've explained the situation pretty well that we see in what we referred to earlier as the substandard rental market. If just when we have this kind of demand, people have to live somewhere, and if they can, they're not being accepted in the standard rental market, places where services are kept up, the apartments are maintained, rental units are in good condition. Because of the background check, if you have an eviction on your record, you're severely disadvantaged for being able to apply or be considered there. It comes in, and then you're forced into that substandard area where that landlord may not do any background checks. Unfortunately, they don't do much else either in terms of maintenance, responding to requests, and so it becomes a major public health problem. And we do see that here in Knox County. As long as I've been doing this job at Legal Aid since 2020, we have seen this. We see issues where there's, and not just a little bit of mold, a lot of mold. unresponded emergency heat shutoffs, structural failures, broken windows. The list can go on and on. The kind of conditions that, frankly, are shocking to us sometimes. We have seen those. And then you look at the bottom line and what this person's being charged for rent. And it is like that. It's not much different from that, what you'd call the standard market rate, because they can. It's the economics of it. So we would like to be able to, take more of those cases to court, pursue more injunctions, hold more of those kinds of properties, those bad actors, to account. And codes enforcement can do a lot within the county, but it takes a little bit more. We're an arm of that to represent the individual's rights, the actual tenant themselves, so that they can take action.
Thank you. Commissioner Durrett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to defer to my junior commissioner, Zanders.
Thank you.
So going back to the hotspots for evictions, is there a reason why they are concentrated in these areas?
I wish we had more research to, specifically determine what reasons there are for these areas. I don't have that to provide to council tonight myself, but, we've got some very interested people over at the University of Tennessee that want to look into this and are trying to work with us with data that we get from working with people day to day. So I think in the future, if we can keep this program continuing, we can find out why some of those things are. But don't have any particular broad-reaching reasons, but I can absolutely say that the underlying reason for all the rental increase that we're seeing is we've got an increasing population and a level of housing stock, the supply, that just cannot keep up with this level of rise.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I couldn't help but notice the number of head nodding that was going on in the crowd behind you when we were describing some of the things that were going on. Now, as Commissioner Rawls pointed out, my district is fairly rural, but we're not immune to it. And it really bothers me because like what I just described, and hearing Commissioner Jackson quote the book and hearing the illustration, and that's actually going on here as well. It's not necessarily just low income. It is hitting the dual income working families, one job each, two job each, whatever, trying to make it, because you're right, if you have to live somewhere. And either you're going to scrape all the pennies together to have a roof over your head, or you're not going to have a roof over your head. Now, I bring up living in the 8th District, it's very rural. When I was a kid, I knew, there were lots of folks who had a rental home. It was a family home, mom and dad's house. They don't live anymore. They renovated. A lot of folks had a rental house, and it was a rental house priced accordingly for the area, because you just, you had the house, you had the income, you took care of the neighbors because, well, you knew who lived in there because they were also your neighbor. As a legislative body, is there any, if there's something that we can do to help mitigate some of the bad behavior? Because I certainly, if you own the property, you want to rent it out, it's your prerogative to rent the property. But folks need to live somewhere, and if they're working and they're doing their part, they're trying to make ends meet, they're trying to take care of their family. If there's something that's not necessarily above board, preventing them from doing that, is there something as a county that we could legally do to help facilitate that? Just out of curiosity, it may be something you have to ponder on for a while.
I've pondered on this quite a bit. You know, and not to pit any form of government here that we all live under against the other, but you know, rent capping or things like that are just not a reality for us here. Expansion of subsidized housing, affordable housing, that's where money comes through either HUD or through KCDC. That, I think, is sorely needed right now, and I'm sure my colleague Emily Calla could attest to that as well. Whether that's in the city or the county, like everywhere in our region, we need more affordable housing. So anything that this body can do to encourage people to participate in the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, or for developers to build more affordable housing. We've got a lot of housing going up, but not all of it, or not even most of it, is affordable. We need more of that right now. Dire need for that. You know, I grew up in a very rural county, Polk County, down in the very corner of the state. There was no city in to speak of in the county. So I understand that rural situations are not all that. They are a little bit different, but not totally different. And when a landlord, when we have people coming to us that are saying, my landlord's doubling my rent next month, we've seen a lot of that. When the median is about 50%, we know that this is happening. Like we've seen it. We've seen the charges, and we want to be there to help people. We can negotiate with that landlord. We can do something about that with this program. You know, just raise, as you're asking what this body can do about this. Raising awareness about it could do a lot. I'm afraid that the public does not know enough about some of these issues as we wish that they would. So anything that you could do to amplify that there's a tremendous need. This is a real problem. This is affecting not just a few people, but everybody in this county. No matter where you live or where you work, you're interacting with somebody that's a renter, and it's a growing population of people. They have rights. We want to be there to represent those rights, to help these people through this time. We're in a huge state of change. Whether you're in the most rural part of South Knoxville or just right in the dead center, like a street or two away from here, something about this is affecting you. Mm-hmm. So a little bit of awareness about the problem and some of the solutions that we don't have all the solutions here at Legal Aid. There are a lot of people working on this throughout the county, and some awareness about that might really help.
Thank you. And so obviously referencing what Commissioner Jay said in funding, we have some budgetary constraints.
Yeah.
And increasing funding would be tough, if close to impossible, moving forward in certain scenarios. But when you're talking about affordable housing, when we were in the campaign, I met with a couple lenders, and when they were talking about where young couples were trying to find, getting funding for getting qualified for their first home, and they didn't have the income level. Right. So then they were only left with renting. Mm-hmm. But renting was going to be significantly more than what their mortgage payment would have
Absolutely.
been. When you're hitting a price point, when you say most of what's being built is not affordable, what price point are you looking at being affordable?
Well, that's a sliding scale. We deal with people. We work with people that may only receive $900 a month for Social Security supplemental income. Mm-hmm. So what's affordable for them is going to look different from somebody working a couple of jobs, maybe minimum wage jobs, or a decent, 40-hour-a-week job, but barely making it by because they've got a couple of kids. So it's really going to be kind of a slide to that scale, but we know that $1,500 a month is just dramatically higher from just pre-pandemic levels in 2019 of where it was probably less than $1,000 for your median range. Nobody's income has kept up with that. If we could creep back toward that 1,000, I don't know if that's possible, but that seemed to be where Knoxville got branded and got its notoriety for being an affordable city at that point in time. And to address the cost of this, yes, on the front end, there would have to be funding, so to speak. but it's a cost-saving measure. The stats on this are grossly underestimated. About the $1 spent equals $6 savings. We're not counting in the police response, that the sheriff's office has to spend in addressing homelessness issues, which are myriad. We're not going to go into the whole laundry list of that. We're not even addressing how much this costs in terms of disruption for children, like with DCS and foster care environment, and many other unseen economic costs that may come from a rising homeless population or just people who can't participate in the economy because their rent is such a huge part of their income. Or losing money, losing property every time they go through an eviction. That's maybe another unknown thing about the process. A lot of people, if they can't afford their rent and they have to move, they probably don't have the money to put all that in a storage unit. A lot of their personal property is gone after an eviction. They have to start over, and that's a tremendous economic waste. So we're a program that's designed to we stretch out how much time people have in the home that they've been living in. And that matters because it keeps them from sliding into homelessness. Because once they do, it's a sharp drop and a huge, long climb out of that. So that's why we're so effective and why we help people to stay, an economic participant, so to speak. They keep a hold of their money. They get to keep spending it in Knox County. So I like to think of this as an investment. If you're going to save $6 for every dollar spent, I don't see how you can afford not to pay for it. And even if you only, get a portion of that, 1 to 3 is still pretty good. That's an investment that I would take. So that's why I think that this is it's proven to be effective. These things scale up if we're able to expand the program, or at least just keep it at the size that it is. If we were representing, instead of just 20 to 30% of the eviction docket per week, and maybe more like 50 to 70% of those people, we could still probably present 91% of those judgments for those people as well. We just have to have the staff to do it, the attorneys and the paralegals. So that's where we'd like to, where we're seeing. We're not here necessarily selling this at this point, but just to provide some information, we're seeing that those are the results that we can count on. Thank you.
Thank you. For Junior Commissioner Greenwood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a brief question. Approximately how many attorneys work with this organization or work for you all?
So program-wide, we cover 26 counties from Chattanooga up to Johnson City. We have 29 attorneys right now. And as we mentioned in the presentation, 5 are working through the eviction prevention program.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Rawls.
Madam Chair, thank you. Debbie and team, thank you for the presentation. I think it's imperative for us to understand what type of community we live in. I think most people in Knoxville think everything is gravy and that it's okay, it's happening to those people over there. But this thing is happening everywhere. We live in a super sensitive community right now. The average 56%, spending 56% on rent, people hear that number and they go, what is 56%? The average Knoxvillian only makes $28,000 a year. That's an individual. The average household, that's average. We're not gonna do mean because we're not gonna stretch the numbers, but because we can do that with mean and mean, yeah. But the average household is $44,000. Now, I don't know about y'all, but a $1,400 rent, a $2,400 rent, that's significant. And so I would just say, as a legislative body, let's be conscientious of where we are as a community and funding when this rolls around to our opportunity to invest in this.
Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question, I think, for Mr. Davis. do you keep track of the immigration status of people that you represent?
Yes, we do. Due to, a lot of the money that we do receive is federally supplied. So we have to check for each and every person that we have that they have either legal citizenship or legal resident status.
Okay, and I mean, can you provide those statistics to us right now? The
Uh,
breakdown of immigration status for people that are being represented in the eviction program?
Again, due to our regulations, that's 100% of the people that we.
But, no, I'm saying, can you tell me how many are not here? How many are legal permanent residents? How many people are citizens? And how many people are other than that?
Okay.
Can we hold on one second, please? We're trying to do county business, and I appreciate that you're here, but commissioners need to be able to answer questions, and the gentleman needs to have respect to be able to talk. Thank you.
Again, everyone, that's a threshold question that we have to ask folks. If they have some sort of legal status or not. And if that's a no, then we can't provide services to them. So it's 100% of the people in our program have citizenship status or some sort of legal resident status. But I'm sorry, we don't track the numbers of who falls into what category.
Okay. So everyone that you represent has some type of legal basis for residing in this county in the United States?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate your time and questions, and I'm sure as it comes to budget time, we'll be reaching out to you and getting some more questions answered.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the commission.
Thank you so much. Next item, please.
Item number 33 is presentation Knox County Schools Annual Report by Superintendent John Ryswick.
Dr. Ryswick, if you'll give your name and county of residence, please.
Sure, John Ryswick, Knox County. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioners, for, we'll be brief, I promise. Y'all have had a lot of good discussion already tonight. So just wanted I'll say this briefly, and I'm going to have Ms. Lautner walk you through a few pages of this, but you received our annual report. You should have gotten copies of those when you came in today. Just wanted to say this is the second year we've produced one of these for Knox County Schools. For us, this was something when I became superintendent, I thought it was really important that we would do. One, to increase the transparency about what Knox County Schools does, to hold us accountable to the dollars that we have, and then also to tell the stories of our educators and just what they do every day and how important that is. We believe that our goal in Knox County, our main purpose, we exist. We are the organization that wakes up every day thinking about preparing the next generation. And that's been very, very important for us to make sure that Knoxville stays prosperous moving forward. And so to me, this is kind of the yearbook for our teachers and principals who do the great work every day. And you'll see that in a second. I also want to thank this body, the commission, for you to continue in your continued investment in public education and how important that is for us. We continue to try to be great stewards of that money. I think even last year, being able to bring our folks to market value with about a $44 million investment and not coming back to this body to ask for money, but doing that through our budget and also cuts that we made, about a 5% cut in the district office to get to that level. So thank you. I know a lot of you and just know your support for that. And with that, I'll have Ms. Lautner walk you through some of the highlights of this really quick.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I will do my best to be brief. My name is Corey Lautner. I'm our Assistant Superintendent of Strategy. The annual report is a labor of love for our division. You heard Dr. Ryswick say we kind of look at it as our yearbook for the district, but it's also a very honest yearbook. So we want to call out and take this opportunity to call out what it is we set out to accomplish last year, where we met those objectives, where we maybe fell short of those objectives, where we're doubling down on our strategies that worked, and where we are reevaluating some of the strategies that didn't yield the results that we anticipated. And so I'll just take a quick moment to give you all a brief tour of the report, and the folks who really did the work and made this work possible are sitting in the audience as well in case you all have any questions. And I'll pause for just a moment and recognize our junior commissioners who are at the table, because this is just as much a report on your work as it is a report on our work. So much of what has occurred is the result of our students' dedication and passion and commitment to education. So I want to applaud you all in that regard as well. And so if you open your reports, everyone does have one in front of them, right? Okay, excellent. I'll begin just on the first spread within the book, and I actually don't know how to run this guy, but I'll call out page numbers as we go. Is that the best way to run this presentation? Okay. So for our folks in the audience, if this is a little bit disengaging, if you go to our website, you can also follow along. There is a copy of the annual report available on the main page of our website as well. And so if you keep scrolling, what you'll see, and scroll once more, you'll see kind of our impact at a glance. This is our footprint as a district. Something that I don't know that we take enough time to step back and reflect on is the sheer size of Knox County and what that means for Knox County schools. We are the 68th largest public school system in the nation. That's pretty impressive when you really step back and kind of think about it. And so this is the impact that we're making on a daily basis and kind of the results of the work that took place last year. I'm not going to camp on any one page, but please stop me if you have any questions along the way. I'll move through pretty quickly. If you can scroll to the next page, you'll see kind of our mission from this past year that we're carrying forth into this year. And this is a charge that Dr. Rice-Wick really extended to all of our principals, all of our school, classroom, and district leaders to lead with intention, to be cognizant of the work that we do every single day and the position that we occupy in the community, and that is preparing our next generation for the workforce and for the future of Knox County. And so you can see kind of the graphic there at the bottom takes you through the process that we've walked through as an administration, really thinking about continuous improvement, beginning at the district and moving now into the school and focusing on what we're calling the year of the principal, and investing very intentionally in our school leaders and our principals as the change agents that they are in the building, and tasking those change agents to take the time and to think intentionally about making a complex, a very large system feel small for more than 60,000 students. That's not an easy task, but it's something that our educators wake up and are thinking about each and every day. So if we move on to the next page, you'll recall that we did regionalize our school structure a couple years ago. In case you want a quick and handy reference as to which schools are in which regions, you can find that on this spread here. And I'll move ahead to the next page. You hear Dr. Rice-Wick talk often about our 4 priorities as a district. We say regularly that, if it's work that we're investing in, if it's work that we're either spending or allocating resources toward, whether that's time, material, or energy, it really should center on one of these 4 priorities: excellence in foundational skills, great educators in every school, career empowerment and preparation, and last but not least, success for every student. And you can see here that that work really for us begins in preschool, and we carry that through to execution all the way through our 865 academies in the high school environment. And so that's something that we've fully internalized and we've sought to operationalize as a district. And if you're wondering how and why, we encourage you to read the story. So if you can proceed to the next page, this is really where we get into kind of the heart of our annual report, the meat and potatoes of the entire document. I love this child. I feel like his expression is what everyone feels when you start talking about strategic planning. He was very strategically chosen for this page. But our annual action plan is our compact with our Board of Education that we renew on an annual basis. It takes kind of our 5-year vision for the district and breaks it down into a bite-sized roadmap, annual checkpoints and benchmarks that we need to accomplish to ensure that we're on track and doing right by the students that we serve. And so I'm not going to take you through each and every objective, but what I will ask you to do is really take a look at the table on this page, because what it does is it outlines the objectives that we met over the course of last year and the objectives that we did not meet over the course of last year. What you'll see is that in those first 3 domains, leadership of the district, excellence in foundational skills, and great educators for every school, we're seeing exactly what we want to see. We're doing really well in those spaces. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But I also want to call out, when you get to career empowerment and preparation, that these numbers looked very different this time last year. And it's part of why we take a moment to evaluate ourselves on an annual basis to track whether or not there is any change. This time last year, we had more unmet objectives than we had met objectives. And that's something that we anticipate seeing when we're talking about new work. In our 865 academies, in that career empowerment and preparation space, that is new work for us. And so that tells us that we're setting sufficiently ambitious objectives for ourselves. And we're also working to close that gap. So we were really excited to see some gains in that space. In Success for Every Student, this is that domain that typically looks at individualizing educational opportunities for students, closing persistent achievement gaps, and you can see we actually have more unmet objectives than we had met objectives. And that's something that we take very seriously. It's something that we look at very closely. Something worth noting here is that while we made gains in almost every single one of our objectives, we didn't make the gains at the accelerated rate, that pace that we set for ourselves. And so we're not taking our foot off the pedal. We're not easing off, and you'll see evidence of that throughout the report. We're just going to be very cognizant of the fact that we intend to accelerate in this space, and we need to dig in, and we need to do a little bit more work here. And so over the course of these next 2 pages, you can see kind of a line item by line item breakdown of each of those objectives and how they shook out over the course of last year. I'm not going to read each of those to you, but what you do have, whoever's running this, you were right. Go to the next one. You've got it. There we go. Thank you. What you do have embedded in the next handful of pages is a division by division breakdown of the strategies that we leveraged, the resources that we used to accomplish these goals and to meet these objectives. We do have 5 operational divisions as a district: academics, business and talent, operations, strategy, and student success. In the academic space, we were really excited to see gains in the spaces we want to see gains in ELA and in math. Those are 2 really key benchmarks for student success. And not only are we habitually outpacing the state in ELA, we also saw on average, if you take all of our grades combined and put them together and say kind of what was our math growth, about 8%, a little over 8% math growth over the last 3 years. Large gains in that Algebra 1 space, which is a key benchmark for us last year. Something that we partially attribute to our investment in some high quality instructional material and new math curriculum. So we want to thank you all for approving that for us last year as well. It's already paying dividends. If you can kind of tab through this, what you'll see as you flip through the academic section is landscape analysis that we performed to kind of baseline the state of early literacy across the district. This is the first time we really took a hard look at early literacy at large across the district, identified bright spots, and identified some areas in which we want to lift those bright spots up that we saw here and embed them and really internalize them over here. And so that was, work that began last year, but will continue to bear fruit for us for years to come. You can also flip through, and there's 2 pages worth of a spread on, if you tab one more time, on our 865 academies. Something that is just really worth calling out that we were very, very pleased to see is that if you look at 2022, going back to the start of our 865 academies initiative, we saw graduation rate sitting right around 89.7%. As of last year, we were up to 93%. Particularly encouraging is that we are seeing that growth in every single student subgroup. And so that's very encouraging to us. That's what we want to see. If you flip the page, you can see exactly what that work looks like and what that means for individual students. So I encourage you to take a moment to read their stories and see what their academy's journey has meant to them. In the business and talent space, you can read a little bit more about our Teach Knox initiative, our intentional work around investing in the recruitment, the development, and specifically the retention of our classroom leaders, those high-quality instructors who really are making a difference for our students each and every day. You heard Dr. Reiswick mention that landmark investment in staff and some of the tough choices that we made to get to that point. That story resides here and how we did that. And you can also see the dividends that it has paid, that amid a national teacher shortage, we started with a record low number of teacher vacancies in the state. And so all of that is laid out in these pages and more. In the operations section, you'll see a little bit more that you all were very involved in, our Farragut property acquisition to invest in and work with the community to identify a plan to mitigate and address the growth that we're seeing in that area. You'll also see in the next spread our commitment to safe schools, safe students, the strategies that we're using to keep students safe on our school campuses each and every day, and some of the very intentional investments that have been made in that space as well. Moving ahead to strategy, you will see our commitment to really investing and thinking differently about how we support students and families, building out a dedicated student and family support center, thinking very creatively about how we share our message and we give folks that strategic peek behind the curtain and invite them into our day-to-day work. You should all have a little brochure on your desk as well for a podcast that we launched last week, which is just another foray into an untapped medium and trying to engage more people in the discussion around education in Knox County, what it means for our students, and how to get involved and how to really enhance the work that we're doing each and every day, and that is taking place in our classrooms. Turning the page, you can see that steering a ship comprised of 9,000 people and 60,000 students is no easy task. So we have developed a strategic planning framework to help us kind of keep everyone on task and rowing in the right direction, in the same direction. And so that was some intentional work that we engaged in over the course of last year as well. And finally, in our student success space, I do just want to take a moment to call out these numbers because they are impressive. 3% gains in math proficiency and a 3.7% gain in ELA proficiency across our most historically difficult to reach student subgroups. And so that's due to some very intentional effort on behalf of the student success team, thinking about academic intervention, continuous improvement in special education. And if you turn the page, looking specifically at the work that's been done in our Region 5 schools around our Region 5 strategic plan, this is another space in which we fell short of some very, very ambitious goals, but as a result, we made gains in every single space. So we saw proficiency and achievement climbing for our students, which is exactly what we want to see. And we also identified exactly where we need to work a little harder and more intentionally over the course of this year to be able to catch up and meet those year 2 goals. I will wrap up very quickly by saying that there's also a spread on pages 46 and 47 that outlines our budget, and specifically that strategy, that philosophy that we adopted last year to help us get to those landmark investments, those gains in our people, to bring all of our employees up to a market value salary, really kind of adopting more of a zero-based budget mentality as we were building our budget, so that we could prioritize our people. And so that story is memorialized here as well. And last but not least, in the end, the handful of pages that are left, you'll see that we cannot do this work alone. This is something Dr. Reiswick says regularly, that we have to call on our community, and we're so grateful that our community always answers that call. And so you will see just some of the tremendous work that our regional teacher, family councils, our CEOs on our CEO Champions Council for the 865 Academies, and our other community and nonprofit leaders have done with the district to really catalyze our work and support our students along their path to the workforce. And so again, if you have any questions, we're standing by to answer, but we really just wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity to share some of the great work happening in our schools, and for our junior commissioners, thank you all for being a part of that story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the great presentation. I have to say, this is my going into the 7th year as a commissioner, and your leadership team is refreshing, it's professional, it's proactive. That hasn't always been the case, and it seems like there is a real changing tide in the culture to one that is excited for opportunities ahead. That is, when I first came on commission, it was almost every presentation was doom and gloom, and it was like, and I just applaud you. That's a huge culture shift, and it takes a lot of time and leadership and a lot of good people to put in the right place. I really, really applaud your accountability. You guys are not afraid to say we didn't make it. We need to do better. That has never been the case. And not only are we, gauging ourselves against our peers and our state and our nation, but we're also being really honest about it. And I think that takes a lot. We certainly never succeed alone. So I'm really glad to see that your work with the Chamber and the Education Foundation and Partners in Education United Way is highlighted. I know that those are probably each 4 or 5 pages long, but have to be convinced. And more importantly, keep up the good work. We appreciate our investment in education. We appreciate your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Riswick. Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Riswick, your 865 Academy, of course, academies have gotten huge praise and recognition, and I'm very excited about that. But what I'm really excited about, statistic that caught me, is what you're doing with our preschools now. You know, I'm reading here 100 classrooms. You know, that averages out at least 1 per school. I know geographically it doesn't work that way, but commissioners, you know, if we don't get these kids when they're little, I mean, statistics show, you know, if they haven't got it by about 3rd grade, the odds of catching them up beyond that are extremely difficult. So I know you're spread real thin, but thank you for the special emphasis that you're doing more on also the preschool programming. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll say, you know, preschool was important for us, and just so you guys understand what preschool looks like, I would definitely go visit some of those. But, you know, I was at the new one we opened kind of from Carnes, part of the Carnes Annex that was there, and Mr. Harris is the principal there. They're taking 3rd graders and they're doing 3-year-olds and doing diagnostics on them based on where their literacy deficits are. So that's giving us 2 additional years prior to kindergarten to have the head start. And they're still playing and they have a playground. All those things still happen, but the students don't know that. But they've got spreadsheets of the diagnostics of where those gaps are, so we can close those before they are kindergarten ready, so we can get that done before, because, you know, we know waiting till 3rd grade is too late. So it's definitely been an intentional investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you, Dr. Riswick.
Thank
We
you all.
appreciate it. And I want to thank Commissioner Jay for setting this up, and thank you, Drew, for all of the slides that you've been doing this evening. And we will now, next item, please.
Next item is public forum for agenda items only.
Okay, this is for agenda items. We have Kevin Murphy. Mr. Murphy, if you'll state your name and county of residence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin Murphy, Knox County resident. I'd like to briefly speak on the policy for the residential improvement districts that's in front of you tonight. 2 things in particular. There's a section, I think, in the red line that speaks about community involvement. And I want to iterate that that's something that really needs to happen. Right now, I think it may say that community, the applicant is, will be expected to have a community meeting. If there's anything you can do to strengthen that, that would help. Community meetings are where the real discussion happens. It's where people it's where they come in, they don't know what's going on, they learn the specifics, they can ask questions. I've seen it be incredibly helpful when you have a developer. If you have county staff that's there that can answer more information about the engineering that's going on, the infrastructure, these are helpful, because then the people know what's happening. So anything that you can do to strengthen that up is really good. And we know that we have experience where if it's not a absolute requirement, they kind of skirt through it. And recently went through a development plan approval where the home builder applicant was asked by both Planning Commission, and then it was appealed to the Board of Zoning Appeals, what was the public, engagement? And the applicant said, well, we had public engagement. It was when we did rezoning, and we had that at the public, at the rezoning hearing. And that's not right. We're talking about rezoning, then we weren't talking about development plan. And same thing happens with a proposed RITA. You need to have the community involvement be a required step. So I urge you to do that. Second thing I want to speak about with the RITA is, thinking about, should these be things that are approved in the rural area of the county as depicted in the growth plan map? We spent a lot of time through Advanced Knox, going through, arguing about that map and everything. And at the end, we were told that, we've made choices, and this is the policy of the county. And one of the things is, that's the area we're supposed to be trying to preserve. And more importantly, it's the area where we're in the planned growth area and the urban area, we are choosing to invest there. The rural area is the area that you have making a choice not to invest as much in terms of infrastructure. Approving RIDAs in the rural area allows it allows financing of improvements that otherwise wouldn't be penciling out, shall we say? And one of the things is that is actually going to increase your development pressure. A developer will be required to put in infrastructure, and without a RIDA, they may not be able to afford it. The project wouldn't pencil out, and it would never start. But if you have a RIDA in the rural area, then then there's this pool of money that's available for these things that are really hard, like extending those sewer lines. And I want you to understand that it's the extension of sewer that drives development, especially in the rural areas. So these RIDAs in the these improvement districts in the rural area are not going to accomplish your goal of preserving those areas. They're going to accomplish the goal of facilitating development, especially again I really think the expansion of sewer out there. That's what if I was an applicant, that's what I'd be going for, asking for a RIDA for. And you get one, and start to expand the sewer, and then you see it go again and again and again. And approving those in the rural area doesn't seem to fit the purpose of what we just went through with all the stuff for advanced Knox. So I'd ask you very strongly to consider policy statements in that vein. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Commissioner Fox?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions for Mr. Murphy, seeing as he's speaking on this issue.
If we can make that quick, because this is just public forum.
Yes, it'll be quick. Because when I was reading the policy and these additions, I thought of three questions. Number one, how far in advance do you think community input should be given? Number two, what is the radius of what because you're an active community advocate. So what do you think would be a proper radius for engaging community? And number three, how do you believe that notices should be given to community that may be impacted by these?
Great questions. Suggestions might be community generally need 2 weeks is great. 1 week is an absolute minimum to get people there. They'll show up though if this is on their radar screen. If it's hot, we've been able to announce a meeting. 2 weeks is about right. About it is commensurate on how big, but usually about a 2 mile radius is where people get really excited about within a mile. But 2 miles gets if these are, especially if the improvements are stretching out. In terms of the notice, that's always a hard part. We use a lot of social email and emails. If any of you as commissioners have mailing list in your districts, those would be incredibly helpful. And getting just to say that there is the RIDA being considered, and this applicant is having a community meeting here.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Rick Roach. Okay. The next speaker is Amani Shyla. Okay. So that is it for public forum. I'm sorry? Shula. Thank you. I didn't figure that I was saying that right, so I apologize. Next item, please.
Wait a minute. I signed up for.
You're on the open public forum.
Okay,
Mhm.
that's what I'm on.
Yep, you're on there.
Items? Okay.
Yep, you're on there. This is just agenda items.
No worries, thank
Yep,
you.
yep, you're welcome.
Next item is the approval of minutes of the previous meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Who was second? I'm sorry. I had a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jay, second by Commissioner Durrett. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, please.
Item number 34 is consideration of the acceptance of new county roads. A, Arbor Gate Lane. B, Wellington Chase Lane, located in Wellington Chase, District 3. C, Singletree Lane. D, Sweet Amber Lane, located in Williford Phase 1, District 4. E, Sway Branch Lane, located in Williford Phase 1 and 2, District 4. F, Valley Glen Boulevard. G, Iris Garden Lane. H, Tropical Lane. I, Sandy Springs Lane. J, Magical Drive. K, Paradise Valley Lane. These are all located in the Glen at West Valley, Unit 2, District 5. L is Pepper Ridge Lane, located in Brandywine at Pepper Ridge, District 6. M. Poppy Seed Lane, N. Spearmint Lane, O. Curly Top Lane, located in Towering Oaks subdivision, District 6, P. Pepperbush Lane, Q. Flame Willow Lane, R. Lemonberry Street, located in Hayden Farms, Phase 1B, District 6, S. Park Grove Lane, T. Hollow Oak Lane, U. Still Glen Lane, located in Spradlin Place, Unit 1, District 7. V is Country Brook Lane, W. Lantern Ridge Lane. These are located in Spradlin Place, Units 1 and 2, District 7. X is Briar Hill Lane, Y. Glen Eagle Lane, located in Spradlin Place, Unit 2, District 7. And Z is Whisper Lane, located in Bent Branch Subdivision, District 7.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jay, second by Commissioner Hill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, please.
Item number 35 is consideration of the closure of unbuilt right-of-way between Lot 1 and Community Lot 1 of the 2017 plat titled Laurel Ridge Phase 1 in Commission District 6 on second reading.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Hill, second by Commissioner Frazier. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, please.
Item number 36, line item transfers, total amount of $2,396,822.92.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jay, second by Commissioner Hill. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, please.
All right, budget amendments was withdrawn. Next, we have notary public applications. We had 229 received.
Motion to approve?
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Durrett, a second by Commissioner Frazier. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Next item, please.
Item number 38, spread of record, the Knox County Mayor's order reappointing Ruth Ann Millsaps to the Board of Commissioners of the West Knox Utility District. Item number 39, spread of record, the Knox County Property Assessor's appointment of Jim Weaver to the Knox County Employee Insurance Benefits Committee to complete an unfulfilled term expiring December 31st, 2027.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 42, resolution R-25-1-902 is approving certain policies and procedures relating to the consideration of petitions for the creation of infrastructure development districts.
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Hill. Second by Commissioner Lee. Any discussion? Commissioner Russell.
No, actually, I was going to ask for a break, but since we're already into it, could we have a break before the next one?
We will, yes, we can, well, how about if we could get down to, yeah, we can do it after that. Yeah.
Thank you. I do, actually, on this one, I do plan on voting no against it, just simply for the same reasons that I've expressed before. I don't feel like that we should be financing development that occurs inside the district and that the developer is required to do anyway to do the development. But that's just a statement, no questions related to it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to direct everybody's attention to page 2 and or section 2, 2.1 of the petition process. I think there's a typo, and before we just willy-nilly adopt this, I want to make sure that that's addressed. If you look at the middle of the page, it says, I'll pick it up, submit the petition pursuant to the act, but the applicable county staff recommendation will be that the petition not be denied approval. I think that was the petition be denied approval, but I'm just laying that out there. Mr. Mamatov, would you care to address that?
I'm sorry, I was just nodding in agreement.
Oh,
with you.
okay.
It was a typo.
It was a
That extra
typo.
nod is- Yes, it was a triple negative.
Yes, has there been am I looking at has there been a more recent revision?
Commissioner, Frazier caught it as well, and I sent her a red line with that change.
Okay,
I have that as an amendment.
okay. And, well, and the other thing is I'm interested in, hearing about I guess more substance to the community input provision, amendment. And that's why when Mr. Murphy stepped up, I'm like, well, I'll just ask him what he thinks about that. But I think that there may need to be additional parameters for community input, and I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mandy, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've spent a great deal of time working on this, looking at this, asking questions, working with staff, asking legal, because I have very mixed emotions about it. I do think it's a double-edged sword. I think that there are pros and cons, but it's one of these things that we've asked the question about for probably the last decade. You know, how do we require the developers to do more? You know, when I came on commission, we worked on a resolution where we could actually place conditions on motions to require some of those infrastructure improvements, the supportive infrastructure improvements in the general area of the project. But going past the geographic area of the project, we kind of hit a wall. I don't think that we're ever going to get the state to consider impact fees or adequate facilities taxes. I just don't. We bring it forward every year. I don't think that it's going to happen. This may be the closest thing we have. Again, I have mixed emotions about it. You all saw that at the at our zoning meeting when we discussed and approved the creation of the district, I added 5 amendments. And what I wanted to do, I gave you all a handout, and since the meeting has started, I actually got some of my answers, a response from Mr. Mamatoff. So I've actually amended what you have in front of me, and so I will have to verbally read out potential amendments. But I wanted for my colleagues to understand that the motions that I made, or the motion that I made to approve with the 5 amendments, that they would be addressed in the policy. So for the first amendment that I made was basically the petition was contingent upon the approval of the policy. That's kind of obvious. We'll be doing that. Number 2 is contingent upon the successful execution of Knox County Engineering Policy and Procedure for Land Acquisition. That is covered under 3.9 in relationship to county existing policies, and it is addressed in the MOU. Number 3, the reporting, I will be adding, or I will be proposing an addition to one of the sections to address that. Number 4, contingent upon the environmental study. Again, this is covered under 3.9 in relationship to county existing policies, also in the MOU. And then the last one, agreeing to place the 70 acres zoned ag in a conservation easement. Again, this is covered in section 3.9 in relationship to county existing policies in the MOU. I do want to ask our law department, thank you, a question in regards to Mr. Murphy's suggestion. You know, I looked at that language, and it does state, this is section 3.8, community input. It does say developers will be expected to hold at least one community meeting. And this section, I don't know if you all recall, this was added after our workshop, and we collectively as a group said we wanted community input. We wanted that to be a part of the process, and so that section was added. So, Mr. Moyers, my question is, how do we strengthen that language, and can we, by state law, can we require the developers to hold a community meeting?
I don't believe there's anything in the statute that would prevent it. And so if you wanted to condition approval of this on a community meeting, I don't see anything that would hinder that. In what way, this policy, he says developers will be expected. Do you want to say required, or in what way do you want to strengthen it?
I would be fine with that. I would just,
I mean, if you wanted to change will be expected to required, I don't see anything in the statute that I'm aware of as I sit here that would prevent that.
okay, thank you, Director Moyers, I appreciate that. And then also, Mr. Murphy brought up the rural areas. This is something that I have spoken with staff and legal several days over and over again about how do we address these areas in the policy legally, and can we identify where we will consider and won't consider these applications according to our growth policy plan? And I guess that's my question, because the answer to me was you really can't. You can't identify, we will not consider an application in the rural area of the growth policy plan.
No, the statute says that if an application is filed, it must be acted upon.
Okay, thank you. So, commissioners, let me pull this up. And I'm sorry, I really tried to print this out for you all and have it ready for you, but I just got the last suggestions from Mr. Mamatoff. So, these are the proposed amendments to the policy and procedures relating to the consideration of petitions for the creation of infrastructure development districts. Sorry, got to make myself a note. Section 2.1, commencement of petition process. As Commissioner Fox stated, in the middle of the section, there's simply a typo. And so where it says may submit the petition pursuant to the act, but the applicable staff recommendation will be that the petition be denied approval. And so the amendment would be to delete the word not. So it would read, the recommendation will be that the petition be denied approval. That's the first one. Section 3, general policies relating to the infrastructure development district. 3.8, community input. Change the word, is it shall?
No, it's expected.
Expected to require. Add section 3.10, reporting to commission. The county's Department of Engineering will provide quarterly reports on each district approved pursuant to these policies on the progress of construction of infrastructure in the district. And the developer shall be required in a development agreement to cooperate with such reports and to also provide periodic reports to county commission until all such infrastructure is completed. Section 4, fees and expenses miscellaneous. Add section 4.4, amendments. These policies may be amended at any time by duly adopted resolution of county commission. The county commission will conduct a full review and reassessment of these policies not later than 1 year from the approval of these policies, and upon such review and reassessment, county commission may amend or rescind these policies or leave these policies in effect. Exhibit A. Yes.
Commissioner Jay.
Can I ask a question about that one amendment?
Yes.
So if I read this correctly, it said no later than 1 year, we'll review it and make it changes. But at the beginning, it says we can amend it any time. I think that when we went through the growth policy document, we laid out pretty clearly that we did not want to amend things more than once a quarter. Because everybody, all the parties involved, from the applicant to the engineering department, to the finance department, IDB, everybody, if this is changed on a monthly basis, it's a nightmare. I think if it's changed on a quarterly basis, it's still pretty hard. I would recommend that perhaps you change that. These policies may be amended every quarter on the same schedule. Otherwise, we're kind of opening us up for, if we have a brand new commissioner who walks in the door and just says, I want to change it this month and this month and this month, it's really going to be difficult for all the parties to do their job.
Director Snowden, can you speak to that, or as far as, or Director Caldwell, Mr. Mamatoff, what is your recommendation?
May I speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Name and address for the record, please.
Mark Mamontoff, Knox County. I agree with you, what Commissioner Jay is saying from a policy matter, but from a legal matter, this board at any time could meet to vote. I mean, you can't bind yourself not to amend something that you adopted by resolution. A majority of this commission could at any point say, we hate it, you made a terrible mistake and we want to amend this. And so I think your sentiment, no disrespect, is totally on point. I think as a practical matter and legal matter, I think Mr. Moyers would agree with me. You have the legal right to amend these policies at any point. So that's, the first sentence was just recognizing that. The second sentence is saying, maybe we ought to see how these go for a year and then we'll revisit them.
Thank you, Commissioner Jay. And then the last one, Exhibit A. So this is where I'd like to address the rural areas. Add 2 bullet points to question number 12. Is the proposed development in the urban growth boundary, planned growth area, or rural area of the growth policy plan? If in the rural area, how does the development support the place type classification in the comprehensive plan and the policies for the rural area of the growth policy plan? So this will put the burden of justifying the application request on the developer to follow the processes and the guardrails that we just approved in the growth policy plan and the comprehensive plan for rural areas. And those are my proposed amendments. Thank you all for your patience and your time.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question. First of all, let me say this. There was an article, I did some research on these because obviously this is the second one that was brought up. There was an article.
Madam Chair, point of order. I believe in order to debate the amendments, a substitute motion for the amendments has to happen with a second before we can get into discussing the amendments.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to include the amendments as read.
Second.
Okay, we've got a substitute motion on the floor by Commissioner Frazier, and was that you, Commissioner Rawls? Jackson, I'm sorry. And Commissioner Jackson for a second, and now we will open it up for discussion. Thank you, Commissioner Jay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So are we discussing the amendments? Or are we voting on whether the amendments go with the policy, or are we voting on the whole thing with this motion?
We're on Commissioner Frazier's substitute motion with our amendments.
So if the substitute motion passes, then we're back to the
Correct.
initial motion.
If it fails.
Okay, gotcha, okay, thank you. I did some research, and so we were talking about affordable housing. Back in, I guess it was September, there was an article written about the Bristol development, and a spokesperson from D.R. Horton was quoted as saying, "The primary benefit is that infrastructure districts should keep the selling price of homes lower, making homeownership more attainable through lower down payments and monthly mortgage payments." My question, I guess it might be to Mr. Maventov or Director Caldwell. It is my understanding that this assessment, like property taxes, would be collected by the lender with the mortgage payment. So if that's the case, how is D.R. Horton's statement supported by combining the assessment with the 5% admin fee plus interest into their mortgage payment? How is that going to keep their mortgage payment lower, or will it?
Great question, and obviously I'm here on behalf of you all, not for them, but my and Commissioner Russell asked a lot of great questions about this when we had our workshops, but my understanding, I mean, first of all, keep in mind, the strong argument is that this is tax exempt rates. There's special rules in the tax code that allows them to borrow with special assessment at for tax exempt rate, which should be significantly lower than a 30-year traditional mortgage. And so if this amount was financed as an additional part of their land cost as part of their mortgage, then it would be at their mortgage rate. This is at a lesser interest rate using tax exempt finance through special assessment financing. So that interest differential should help out a little bit. My own personal opinion is probably the main benefit is probably lesser down payment up front from because there's just they're able to whatever they're able to put in the special assessment, they should be able to lower the upfront selling price, and therefore it would lower the upfront what percentage it would be required for down payment and things like that. So
right. But essentially, if we're assessing, if the number that was thrown around most often was like $1,000 a year. And so if that's the case, so you're talking about $87 a month.
Yes.
On a mortgage payment.
Right, it may be less than, I just don't want to mislead you that, oh, wow, it's going to be a huge difference. It's probably not going to be a big difference. It's just it's a lower cost of capital for the developer, because of the tax exempt side of it. And there's a different source of capital for this from traditional mortgage markets. And it is, I've been surprised that there is so much interest in it. We're starting to see a lot of development in West Tennessee, and the sort of the penumbra around Memphis starting to take off on this. And I think these policies will be the first meaningful policies in the state if adopted. I can assure you that a lot of people will be plagiarizing. So thank you all to all your good work.
All right, so, that leads me to my next question, because I feel very strongly that the way the state legislature left it, we need a policy. This absolutely needs to happen. My question is, if the policy tonight doesn't pass this evening, can it then be amended and resubmitted for discussion and approval at a later date?
Sure. You don't have to legally have a policy tonight. It was, I do know that I unfortunately was not able to be here when y'all voted on the D.R. Horton thing, but I think it was contingent upon y'all having a policy, but it could be at the next meeting. Obviously, I'd rather get it right than rush something. I do, but Commissioner Frazier had a bunch of good comments, and I think we're getting closer to a good product, but I'm sure we could all keep working on it and continue to make it better.
Okay. But I guess just for clarification, so if we did vote no tonight and this failed tonight, it's not completely dead. We could resurrect it and amend it
Yes.
and vote on it again.
Yeah, that's my
Correct.
point to Commissioner Jay, is that yes, you could, and you could also do it tonight and repeal it next, if a majority of y'all wanted to do that, yes.
Okay. All right, then my next question is, what is the role and responsibilities of the IDB in this process?
So the IDB's role would be, their main role was that we did not want, if at all possible, counties and cities issuing this type of debt. It is a higher risk of default than traditional general obligation debt. And so it's a relatively low risk of default because it's generally payment from taxes. But if subdivisions fail, you know that they happen from time to time. If they do, there could be a default. So by not having the county's name on any debt, the Industrial Development Board is known for dealing with private entities, I mean, and projects where it won't hurt the county's reputation if that happens. So their primary role is to issue the debt and to insulate the county's good borrowing name from doing that. The other key document that it mentioned in Commissioner Frazier's, one of her amendments, is that they would have the development agreement with a lot of the sort of like the conditions that you all put on the D.R. Horton. That will all be fleshed out in the development agreement between the IDB and them. Them getting the money, the developer getting the money, they'll have to agree to the 5 things that I think you all put as conditions, but also that's where the timeframes will be for the thing. That will be, if there's phasing involved, that'll be in the development agreement. So that agreement between the IDB and them will sort of flush out, as it would with a TIF or a pilot, sort of how the incentive is essentially, and it's not truly an incentive in this case, I recognize that, but how the special assessment grant is, the proceeds are spent and what they have to do to deserve them.
Okay, and so, and this setup, this structure is a reimbursement, correct?
Yes.
To where if they spend so much, they upfront the $6.5 million to cover the cost, but then the county takes out the loan with the IDB and reimburses the developer for those funds, correct?
This is drafted as designed to post basically them doing everything first. If they provided a letter of credit to secure, that if they defaulted, then the bondholder would be pay off. We left that flexibility in to look at that, but I don't expect that to happen.
Okay. Thank you. And the reason I asked that is Commissioner Russell brought up a great point about the cost difference between the required infrastructure improvements and the additional, the add-ons, the above and beyond, if you will. And so far, I've been able to keep a tally. We've not been doing this very long, but we're about 10% through our tenure of 4 years. And I have 2 votes so far that I have a little indigestion over. And Wednesday's vote is one of them. And so when you're talking about the $600,000 difference between the estimated $600,000 between the required infrastructure improvements and the extra benefit that we're getting. Basically what was required by the various impact studies. So the additional cost of the roundabout was estimated about $600,000 above the required infrastructure the developer would be responsible for if we didn't do anything. So if the benefit is $600,000 worth of improvement, why are we assessing $6.5 million to the residents of the subdivision? And so,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
and so, why are we entertaining a rid of when the cost of the required infrastructure, is over 10 times the cost of the benefit? And I know that was kind of an extra carrot, if you will, that D.R. Horton said, oh, well, we could go above and beyond, but it's 1/10 of the total infrastructure outside of the development that they would have done anyway. So the assessment of $600,000 to 343 homes is only $1,800 a home. Assessing $1,000 a year with a 5% fee for Knox County would yield the same annual compensation for Knox County, but only burden staff and homeowners for 2 years instead of 2 decades. And I appreciate Commissioner Jackson and what he said when he brought up the costs that go into a project. You talk about the cost of the land. I think a developer was quoted saying it's about 20% of the cost of the total project, maybe just the land acquisition. But then you have the labor and materials, but then you also calculate your profit. And I understand every business needs a profit. Coming from a business owner, you have to have a profit to stay in business. And sometimes you calculate a profit to mitigate risk and other things like that. So my concern is if we assume responsibility of $6 million, if you take $600,000 off of that, you're roughly looking at $6 million worth of external infrastructure that they would be responsible for. We're removing $6 million from the developer's cost of development through reimbursement. So typically a developer is going to budget about 30% profit margin. Of course, that's fine because you understand that it makes good business sense because without a profit, you're not in business. And so you protect yourself from market volatility, inflation, and unforeseen expenses. But calculating the developer's 30% profit margin on $82 million project, then we project a profit of about $24 million. If you remove that $6 million because it's a reimbursement, they spend it, but they're going to get it back, then you're increasing their profit by about 25%. Of the project with no codified requirements to reduce the sale price of the homes in an amount equal to the savings of roughly about $18,000 through this assessment for this particular development. So my question is, we're talking about 2 years versus 20 years or 25 years. Why are we saddling these home buyers, realtors, our staff, and multiple departments with keeping up with these special districts for 20 plus years? Is it possible to differentiate between the cost of required improvements and the above and beyond additional improvements?
And Mr. Mamatoff, if you'll talk directly into the mic, we just want to make sure we get it on,
Yes.
on the record. Thank
Yes.
you.
No problem. I'm sorry if
No, you're fine.
I was talking this way. First of all, I want to be really clear. I'm not. All of it was very well said, and I know that I'm not here to try to convince you to vote for or against this. But to answer your question, if the thought was let's draft these policies such that Knox County has decided that yes, they will do a RITA, but only for optional offsite improvements, that I think could be your approach if that's what this body should so choose. I mean, I don't think, as I talked to a lot of you, I don't think that was the sole reason some of you all were interested in this. There was some feeling that it might enhance and accelerate housing construction in Knox County by making this tool available to developers. But a perfectly rational approach would be the approach that you would say, look, or I'm not sure you're advocating it, but it would be to say, look, you know, we realize that some developers are gonna go above and beyond and could do some off-site improvements that directly benefit their development, but also are not legally required, and we're only gonna allow assessments used for that. I mean, that would be a viable policy as well.
Okay, so from what I hear you saying is, we could differentiate between what's required and the above and beyond. And the above and beyond, according to the state, the way I understand it, we can't require a developer to do anything that's not required by a traffic study or something. They do what's required. Anything above and beyond that is on us. And so we could limit the assessment to the new homeowners with only the cost of the additional improvements, with the developer covering the usual and normal expense of required internal and external infrastructure. Is that correct?
I think legally that's right. I don't think you will, like for this project, $600,000, the creation of a special is probably not worth it. It would be a very unusual project that you would probably see that, which may be the fine answer. I just don't think you'll see many of them.
Right, but if we did that, it'd be like $1,800. If we did $2,000 a year, then it's done in 2 years.
Right.
And so I guess it's my position that Knox County should minimize its involvement in private business practices. And if this is to genuinely serve the people of Knox County, we should only be assessing the dollar amount needed to cover the additional benefits deemed necessary by the county engineer, not the normal and typical expenses of a business. And so, yeah, to limit the exposure of Knox County, the lengthy management requirements of staff, and unnecessary expense and duration of assessments to home buyers, I think these changes are needed to this policy.
Thank you. Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we've got some
Thank
more-
you, Madam Chair, for
more
your patience.
Commissioners, you're welcome. Commissioner Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not, to your statement, whoever you are. District 3. District 10. I apologize. I do apologize. I'm a little bit distracted on my thinking here, but your statement about infrastructure that our own engineering deemed necessary, this is not anything that has been deemed necessary. It's not even on, it's, I believe, if I'm correct, Mr. Snowden, it's not even on the long-range plan, whether that subdivision is built or not. It isn't something that is, required or deemed necessary. I'm gonna put you really on the spot here, Jim, if you could come up a minute. Director Snowden.
Sorry about that, Commissioner Hill. Jim Snowden, Knox County Engineering Public Works.
So we are now hearing the debate, if you will, that really the only amount involved would be an extra $500,000 because it would cost the developer, in this case, $5.5 million to do what they have to do anyway. In your professional assessment, is that a correct statement?
That number's not, I think that number's reasonable. It's obviously, we don't have, we've had roundabouts that cost $3 million, and we've had roundabouts that cost $1.5 million. I think that in reference to, and we've had turn lanes kind of be really high and really low. So I think that's a reasonable number. I think somewhere between 500 and $1 million is the delta between construction of a 100-foot storage turn lane at this location versus a roundabout. Yes, ma'am.
So is it a fair statement that if we did not pass this and D.R. Horton does the improvements that would be required in any plan that Roads and Engineering would request, that it would then roughly cost the county about, say, $1 million to make the additional improvements to the roundabout and all that? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think if we had to come back in at a later date and make additional improvements to accommodate for that type of turning movements and things, yes, I think that's a fair number.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mamatoth, I am correct that whether this policy passes today or not, or if this policy passes today, that still with each individual development, the county commission obtains the authority to pass or deny, whether they come in and follow every little bullet point in this policy or not. It still remains our decision.
That's correct, and developers can file these petitions all they want, and you can vote them down, but unfortunately, they're gonna end up on your agenda, and this was intended to give some guidance as to, what, and the guidance may be, what the majority of this body feels, obviously, but it may be, we just don't want to do them. I mean, again, I mentioned that we have communities that have told us, we just don't want to consider these petitions. And it's largely, Tennessee is becoming like Texas and Florida. A lot of this legislation is coming from those states where special assessment districts have been used widely to enhance housing, and we're starting to see that more and more. It's wonderful in a way, but it's also a problem to have. But yes, you can deny every single one and use your legislative discretion to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. I totally understand where you are going with this, and I understand the math. That just say $1 million roughly, as it was Jim's kind of outside number. On the surface, it would seem to be questionable. I will say, however, though, that this is something that home buyers are not. They can choose to do this or not choose to do this. This is not something that is snuck through or not fully disclosed. And while maybe personally the math wouldn't make sense to me, I might feel like as a property owner in this particular area that if I could get that roundabout, and have improved traffic, I might be willing to pay it. I mean, I don't know if I would or not, but I'm simply saying that this is an ability that a consumer has in their choice to make as far as participating in this or not. And I think that's important to remember. On just another point related directly to the substitute motion, even on the Exhibit A, the 2 points, Commissioner Frazier, that you added, I think they're excellent questions, and I think absolutely they should be asked. Is the answer, because it doesn't say if they can't answer this way, we will deny it. I'm just wondering, and I say this kindly, if we're not getting into a little bit of almost micromanaging here, because every situation is going to be different, and policy is not a step-by-step, so to speak. Typically, procedures are developed to support policy. This is just an outline of things that perhaps need to be done, and I'm a little bit concerned that, and I will not vote against them, but I am a little bit concerned that when we get into those open-ended statements like that, it's really more of a place to put in as a discussion item when we're talking about every individual one, as opposed to actually making it a policy item. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Rawls.
Just had a question around, thank you, Madam Chair. Just had a question around the 2.3, where we're talking about the public meeting. Are we saying that there needs to be specifics around the public meeting? because that's what I assumed in what Madam Frazier was saying. Or am I wrong? You broke it. Yeah.
I was actually referring to section 3.8.
3.8.
3.8, it's the
All right, I'm back
community
on.
input.
Yes, community input.
Okay, okay.
Not
I just
public
wanted
hearings.
us to be cautious if we're gonna say, if we're gonna put meeting requirements around this. Commissioner Hill said it's a general policy. And if we get into the specifics, then we gotta be able to police the specifics as well and penalize people who don't meet a 2-week window or 1-week window, or maybe have an online meeting versus an in-person meeting. So I just, want us to be cautious of that.
Sure, and I appreciate that. I just can speak from experience, 10 years of advocating on behalf of communities, that we gain valuable information from community input, and including the public, when it's regarding their area, their community. And it has really, we've been able to negotiate and solve many of the problems by having those community input meetings. When there is a developer, there is, county staff, if they are available, we've been able to do more really outside of the formal arena than we can in here. And so I do want to say to my colleagues, everything that I brought forward to you, I have fully vetted with staff and legal. And that's typically the process. When we are considering a policy, or when we're considering a resolution or an ordinance, the way that I approach it is I try to have several conversations, meet with folks outside of this meeting, so that I come forward prepared, and I can state I have talked with everyone involved, and here's what I have, here's what I'm offering. Again, this is something I can take it or leave it. I'm just trying to protect the citizens of Knox County with something new that we've never tried before. I do appreciate the comments about micromanaging. I'm sure that, staff pulls their hair out when I call and ask these questions. But I feel strongly that sometimes we do have to include these things. So that's really all I have. Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Thompson said he had heartburn or reservations over the vote, and just wanted to share in those reservations as I was thinking. And as I was thinking about this, I did the math that it's $1,000 a year times 26 years. I mean, you're gonna blow your mind with my math skills. It's $26,000. So we should be able to see, if we did a market study after the subdivision was developed, we should be able to see a $26,000 reduction in the price of a home versus a comparable home in a subdivision that did not include this. But to Commissioner Russell, who I believe is correct, we are paying for things that would not be included in the traffic study. So therefore, this is a that part of it is a regressive tax, which is the equivalent of an impact fee, which in theory, I disagree with. I would have, I share in your concerns about this. So I will probably be voting no on the amendments to the D.R. Horton application, but I'll vote yes to the policies and procedures on the amendments, because I think we still need guidelines as we go forward. But this was a very interesting one.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification for Commissioner Jackson, and if I'm incorrect, Commissioner Frazier, tell me. The amendments you proposed are to the policy that governs all applications, not just to the D.R. Horton application.
Correct, Commissioner Jay and Commissioner Jackson. We voted on the amendments to the petition for the creation of the district at zoning. So
Last week.
Right, last week. So
Okay.
what I gave you is just how those amendments that I brought forward are supported in the policy that you are considering now.
So these are amendments to the policy.
Yes.
My
So these-
mistake.
No
Yeah,
problem.
so these are amendments to the policy.
To my fellow commissioners, when it comes to infrastructure, Knox County has always done the minimum. Now, we've done less than the minimum for 30 years. And every one of your districts, you've told us this. Developers will always do the minimum, exactly what we require of them, because they run businesses and this is part of the line item. And they will continue to always do the minimum until we give them the tools and the support to do something different, to do something more. And I think we need to do more. I think we need to do more infrastructure, and we need to help Knox County grow, and we need to have lots of tools in our toolbox. If you don't like RITAs, they were passed by the state, they are available. If you don't like them because you think one development of this type is going to make and breed more of these, and you don't like development, and you represent areas that does not like development, I understand. I get it. Just vote no, but just own it and just say it, and we'll respect you, and we get it, because that's your opinion, that's your district. I get it. But this policy is good, because without a policy, we're either going to not do anything, which we've done for 30 years, or we're going to approve things that don't have a policy, and it's going to be not as good for the people of Knox County. The amendments are really well done. They are thoughtful, and they are holding the accountable. And I have heard every single zoning meeting for 7 years. Hold them accountable, engage with the public, make them pay for infrastructure that everybody benefits from. I have said, you all have said this time and again. It looks different because it's not just an impact fee. We're not just charging per square foot. But this is the first one, and we're gonna learn, and we're gonna be able to tweak this. And I would encourage you, do not let the perfect be the enemy of good. We have a good policy. We've worked for 6 months. This team, between Mark Mamontoff and Chris Caldwell and Jim Snowden and Mandy Benedict, have busted it for 6 months to get to today. And to delay this or to just vote it down, we basically end up in the same 3 acres per unit sprawl with no infrastructure and a growing county that nobody wants. So I encourage you to vote yes, move it forward. Let's keep adapting and pass this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to clarify, again, we already voted on the RITA for 2814 Tipton Station Road
Right, last week.
last week. So that's going to happen if we vote yes on these amendments that Commissioner Frazier proposed.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
respond? If we vote yes on the policy, because that was the first amendment to D.R. Horton, it was contingent upon the approval of the policy.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Frazier. So, again, I just want to reiterate that this RITA would bring about, that voting yes on this policy would then, in turn, bring about an improvement in the quality of life for South Knox County citizens in light of the fact that this rezoning has been approved. I said before, I would not have voted for the rezoning, but I wasn't on the commission at the time when that was voted. So now, here's the options that we're left with. And so, as a resident of South Knox County that drives by this intersection a minimum of 600 times a year, I'm stating to my fellow commissioners that this would be a great improvement in the quality of life, especially though for the people coming down Tipton Station Road and going north on Martin Mill instead of a left turn lane. So there's a qualitative aspect to this, and we keep hearing numbers, and I just want to state with respect to what Mr. Mamontoff said. This is my understanding of this. It's like, for instance, if you have a $200,000 house and somebody has they want to get a conventional mortgage, that would be 20% down payment, $40,000 they would have to present for a conventional mortgage. But in order to, if the builder, was required to make these improvements, and they just added them to the cost of the house instead of this RITA of $17,000 per lot, why then they'd have to come up with another $4,250 to get a 20% down payment. So, it makes it cheaper for this purchase to take, or for somebody to buy a home, and so it does make it more affordable. Now, is it a huge difference? No, it's not a huge difference, but if somebody saved up $40,000, that they may not be able to save another $4,250 to take advantage of the purchase of the home. And I'm speaking in hypotheticals here, but it does make the house a little bit cheaper in light of the improvements that are required to take place. So it can either be passed through, and holding constant the actual, getting the turnabout instead of a left turn lane. So it is attractive from that aspect, that the house will be a little bit cheaper under that scenario. And like Commissioner Jay said, this is a good policy. I might want to add a few things about the community input down the road. I'm not going to tie that up today with it, but I encourage you all to vote yes on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I appreciate all the commissioners' comments. And I guess we spent 30 minutes on the housing situation. So we're talking about affordable housing, but then we're talking about making these homeowners pay this for 20, 30 years. If somebody could address how this makes these houses cheaper, can Mr. Caldwell or one of you address how does that make the house cheaper?
The only basis in my mind that makes the house cheaper is that the borrowing cost using a special assessment debt is usually significantly lower than the mortgage cost. You're either going to put in the mortgage or you're going to put it in this special assessment. You got to pay for these costs in one way if the developer is going to do them. The special assessment borrowing is a lower cost because it is based on a lien that is above the mortgage, so it's a higher quality credit. It's also based at a tax-exempt interest rate. So because the borrowing cost is lower than the mortgage cost, by transferring a portion of the cost from the mortgage to this special assessment financing, assuming the free market system works, it should lower the overall cost.
Is it lower for the person buying the home or lower for the developer?
Well, it should be lower for the person buying the home, but that's, of course, everybody sort of made this point. You've got to rely on the free market, that it's in the developer's best interest to sell homes, to pass, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking in the mic, to pass on the benefits of the special assessment financing so that the home sales will accelerate and happen. So it theoretically benefits both by accelerating sales, but it would be, because market conditions change so dramatically all the time, it would be really hard, as some of you all mentioned, to empirically make sure that every dollar flowed through to the homeowner.
So as to Commissioner Thompson's comment about the profit, is the profit being paid by the homeowners that would be purchasing this house in their fee that they're having to pay?
Well, the profit's going to either be in one form or the other. It's either going to be put into the purchase price of the home or by transferring to the special assessment financing, they're paying it over time. I think profit-wise, it should hopefully be a wash. The question is, will they not give the homeowner the full benefit of the lower cost by using we could try to put it in the development documents that they have to pass the benefit on to the homeowners. I just think it would be really hard to enforce that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Fox, my understanding, as Mr. Mementov had referred to, there's nothing codified to require them to reduce the cost, the sale of the home price by however much they're saving. Because I'll share this scenario. As a farmer, we've dealt with NRCS and Soil Conservation District, and there are lots of programs that you can participate in, and there's cost sharing and there's reimbursements that we do for like cross fencing and waters and environmental things that we can do. And they pay for internal fencing. They do not pay for external fencing. They do not pay for any perimeter fencing, although you have to do the perimeter fencing in order to do the internal fencing. And Commissioner Russell is nodding her head. I think this is something you're probably familiar with in that financing part. But there are things that are required that you have to do, and the farmer pays 100% of that, but they get the internal fencing and things, either cost shared or reimbursed and things like that. So there are those guidelines already in place. And to Commissioner Hill, I know you'd ask Director Snowden about the $500,000 to $1 million. It wouldn't. What I was asking Mr. Mementov about was not coming in at a later date and then updating it. It would be while the initial improvement of the intersection, instead of the turn lane, we do the roundabout, not a turn lane and then a roundabout later. It would be, the intersection needs to be improved, so it would cost $500,000 to $1 million difference between the turn lane and the roundabout. That would be just the one-time improvement. And then that $500,000, $600,000, whatever it may be, that is the assessed into the RITA, not the 6.5 million. Just that 600 to $1 million, and that does the, I guess, above and beyond. Because I understand that it wasn't necessarily something you required or was necessary. It was a little bit of a but it was nice. It was something that would make the intersection even better than just a turn lane. And to me, doing it this way, where it's the county's beneficial portion, the above and beyond that is taken into this district, serves the residents better, and it creates a more level playing field for all developers. Because if I were a developer and I knew that I could apply for this, and I could get all of my extra infrastructure stuff done and paid for by somebody else, I'd absolutely do it. And if it's a reimbursement structure, I really don't care how much money I have to spend, because I'm going to get it back. It's a zero-sum game, so it's not even part of my construction budget at that point, because it's someone else's money. I'm going to get reimbursed. So if I have to put in a sewer line that goes half a mile, and I have to have gas lines come in, or I'm going to have to do an intersection, but somebody else is going to pay for it, and it's not part of my construction budget, why wouldn't I do it? This makes it to where it's a level playing field for everybody, large developer, small developer, whoever, but it's more county engineering driven, where Director Snowden can say, hey, it's required that you do this, but it'd really be helpful if we did this. And went a little above and beyond. It's going to cost $1 million, but we can put the $1 million in the assessment, and then this development pays for it, but it's for a much shorter period of time, not as much, and it doesn't have the workload for staff and realtors to keep up with it for a long period of time. That was my thought with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Lee, I just wanted to clarify one additional thing, that, if we were to say, if the homeowner was to save $26,000, which is the amount of $1,000 a year times 26, and they were able to pay that on the bond issue rate from Knox County, we get the bond rating, you might pay 5 versus your mortgage at 7. So they save that 2% over time, and that's the savings. But that you only are going to get that savings if you pay $26,000 less than the similar house at a separate subdivision. So I'm not opposed to having this policy. I like the policy. But if we find out that developers are still charging the same market rate of 500,000 and 500,000, then what we have essentially done is put the entire burden onto this subdivision. And these subdivisions tend to be affordable houses. They tend to be starter homes, and then that, I will be one and done. I don't, we will need to see a $26,000 lower sales price in order for me to be convinced to do it again.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay?
Madam Chair, I think we have debated this thoroughly. I'd call for the vote. I ask you to please do so.
Commissioner Durrett's got her light on. She hasn't spoke yet, so. Are you wanting to call for the question, or do you have a question?
I have one question.
Okay.
And it's for our law director. Where does Nolan Dolan law come to play in this, in requiring a developer to do something that is outside of the traffic study?
It's outside the traffic study. It's exactly what implicates Nolan Dolan, okay? So what that policy basically states is that the only way you can require a developer to dedicate, public works is if they are mandated essentially by what it is they're trying to do. So if I put in, a large subdivision and the traffic study shows it's going to require a left turn lane to be built, then when consistent with the law, we can probably require the developer to do that. But it is the minimum, right? You can't go beyond that. At that point, it becomes a taking under the Fifth Amendment. And that's what Nolan and Dolan were basically all about. We have, for decades, kind of taken it for granted that we could just require developers to dedicate real property to us to do improvements for us in exchange for the use of their land. And the Supreme Court has caught up to that and said, no, that's directly out of line with the Fifth Amendment, which requires that you cannot take private property for public use without just compensation. So if you want something like a roundabout rather than just a simple left turn lane, and you don't want to, you can make them do it, but you got to pay them, right? If you don't want to do it, if you don't want to pay it, but you want it, then this is a way that you can do that. But you can't just go and say, well, it's nice property. We'd love to let you develop it, but you need to give us $3 million of your property in order for us to do it for you, or let you do it. So that's where it is. This is a way of getting these kinds of things done where they're not where they can be done, and they're not being paid for by all the taxpayers of the county. They're just being paid for the people who buy in those neighborhoods with full knowledge that that's what they're buying into.
Thank you.
All right. We have got a substitute motion on the floor by Commissioner Frazier, second by Commissioner Jackson, is what we will vote on first. So, all in favor of the substitute motion? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
We have one no. The ayes pass. Motion passes. All right. I apologize to everybody in the crowd, but we have got to take a 10-minute break because everybody needs to go to the bathroom. We will be back at 7:57. Call the meeting back to order. Madam Chair, next item, please.
Item number 43.
Or Madam Clerk.
Item number 43, R-25-1-410 is approving a memorandum of understanding with D.R. Horton, Inc. for road improvements at two intersections, Tipton Station Road at Martin Mill Pike West and Maryville Pike at Tipton Station Road.
Commissioners, Director Snowden had forgot to get with me in time, which is not his fault because he's majorly busy, to defer this because he is still working on this. So we're just going to take a vote that everybody's okay to defer this to February. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, just
Okay,
30 days, please. Thank you.
perfect.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem. So we got a motion.
Motion to defer to February.
All right, we got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Frazier, second by Commissioner Durrett. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Director Snowden.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item number 45, R-25-1-502, approving a contract with Ernst & Young LLP for the provision of consulting services for a housing inventory, market assessment, and disaster resiliency analysis funded through the Regional Catastrophic Preparedness Grant.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Durrett, second by Commissioner Thompson. Any discussion? Commissioner Russell.
Yes, actually, just more of a statement. I also plan to vote against this primarily because we're talking about a $400,000 grant. This is money that is coming into Knox County that is then being spent for research. We're not getting anything concrete for it. It's just simply research, and the money's going to a company that's outside the county. So I really don't see a whole lot of benefit to this. The topic of the research is the housing shortage. We talk about that every single month. I don't think someone else from outside our area counting houses is going to give us any more data or any more help. And we've had so many people talk tonight about how that $400,000 could be better used, and I would like to see us start trying to get some grants for infrastructure rather than research.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the question would be, what do you hope the outcome of the study would be? What's the purpose of the study?
Jenny Holden, Knox County. This is the grant that we've talked about this a couple of times in previous meetings. This housing assessment that we're looking at, and this is a regional grant. It's for Knox County is the host county of the 16 county District 2 Homeland Security region. And what we are hoping to do, it goes beyond just affordable housing. It also looks at the housing stock and how resilient it is. So what we want at the end of this project is to know, in the case of a disaster, what will our housing stock look like post-disaster? Do we have enough housing now? So one of the things that we talk about and what I do, we all talk about that we need more affordable housing. However, none of us have a number on what that looks like. We all know just that we don't have enough. But the idea of knowing exactly what that housing stock looks like and where we need to be trying to get to would be incredibly helpful for all of us that are working in this space.
Thank you. Commissioner Durrett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Holden, so you mentioned disaster. So are you referencing something like what happened in East Tennessee?
Yes.
And so when you say resiliency, does that mean we would be better equipped to recover from said disaster, or does that help us know where we're starting if a disaster were to happen?
So this part of the project, this is the first step in our project. This is actually the grant is just a little bit under $1 million. This is the first step, is the assessment, and then the second step is the plan to help us be in a better position to respond to events such as Hurricane Helene.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Holden, this is also a no local match, correct? It's no money out of Knox County. It's coming to us for this, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Durrett, second by Commissioner Thompson. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The ayes have
Nay.
it. One no. Two? Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Lee. Okay, you need to turn on your lights, guys, so I can hear you. If you're gonna speak up. Next item, please.
Next item is public forum for open topics.
Thank you. The first person on the agenda is Chris Davis with the Election Commission.
Chris Davis, 300 Main Street, Administrator, Knox County Election Commission. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time. I have a appreciation, whether I agree with every decision you make or not. I sure as hell have an appreciation for what you do, because I'm about to fall asleep right now. Thank God for the cold temperatures in here. So just the fact that you can debate stuff is, yeah, I like my lazy job of conducting elections. First thing I want to say real quick, I'll start off, is to our junior commissioners, congratulations to all of you. I understand that Thanks to the Junior Commissioner Program, I'll be speaking to them along with some of my staff here in maybe just a couple of weeks. Looking forward to seeing all of your bright and shining faces. I know I've met a Panther, I've met a Fighting Irish, I've met a Warrior. I'm sure we've got some other schools represented. And I look forward to working with all of you. And I look forward to all of you one day being on a ballot in Knox County. I don't know if this thing's working or not, but hopefully we'll be voting for some of you in like 2030 something or 2040 something or whatever it is.
This might have ruined it for him, so.
No, well, it might very well have, but that's on y'all. I just real quick want to ask the commissioners. I know we have a lot of people watching tonight, and some people in the crowd, but all of you have constituencies and you have different methods of reaching out to your constituents. I would like to encourage all of you to encourage your constituents to look into possibly attending our Elections 101 seminar. It's coming up March the 1st. The reason I think this is vitally important, just about 3 months ago, we had the largest election in the history of Knox County. 224,000 people voted. And when people come out and vote, democracy wins. But quite often, those people only vote once every 4 years, if that. And when that happens, democracy loses, in my opinion. I want educated voters, I want informed voters, and I hear everything under the sun but correct information. People get their information from social media. They get it from cable news. They get it from their buddies or their friends. And I encourage you junior commissioners to share with your friends what you hear and learn about elections and about the democratic process. And this will be an opportunity for individuals to come and ask questions, to learn, to hopefully dispel myths, and most importantly, I think, to make Knox County a stronger place than it already is. And so with that, I just encourage all of you. Basically, I've sat through, 3 hours of basically wanting to spend, about 3 minutes now, telling all of you that please tell your constituents and share with them. They go to knoxvotes.org. You've got almost a month to sign up. We want people from all across the community. Don't care if you're Democrat or Republican or Independent or you worship whatever. I don't care. But we want you there because I want you in the voting booth. Because what annoys me the most, and I will take about another 15 seconds, is when somebody tells me, well, I believe this, or I heard this, or I heard that, and then I look up their voting record and they don't vote. And I'm going to be honest with you right now, my audience is not the general public. Because if you don't vote, I don't care. We're giving all of you, if you're registered to vote and you're able to be registered to vote, we're going to do everything we can to help you. Okay, just want to say that. Commissioners, thank you for your time. And in all sincerity, thank you for what you do because I couldn't do it.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, Mr. Davis, this, just to be clear, this is separate from any, or maybe it's in conjunction with your ability to want to recruit workers and that.
That's a good point. I'll touch on that real quick. This class essentially is geared towards 3 groups. People who vote, people who want to run for office, or people who want to work for us as election workers. Those are the people that I'm essentially targeting. So if someone wants to work for us, I would love to have them come out. They can learn more about the process. They may walk away and say, I'm not that interested in it. That's cool. At least they learned about it. The other thing I will also say, thank you for prompting that. And I think I had a discussion with Commissioner Lee earlier today. Election Commission representatives are also available to come and talk to your church group, your social group, your community group. We'd be glad to. This is a good 6-month period before we have some city elections this fall where we can take the opportunity to go out and talk to maybe homeowners groups or your Sunday school class or your community group or your social club or your Lions or your Ruritan. You had to give Ruritan up here. We'd be glad to come and speak to them if schedule allows. I encourage you and or your constituents to reach out to us as well. Thank you for prompting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Next speaker is Donald Lawson. Okay. Rashad Woods.
He's got an interview. One of the news reporters pulled to the side.
We'll come back to him. We're not going to leave him out. Okay, go ahead. Come on up. Mm-hmm. So is Mr. Lawson outside or is Mr. Woods outside? Mr. Woods. Mr. Woods is outside. Okay. So the next speaker I have in order, I'm just trying to go in order, is Constance Every. Ms. Every, if you don't mind to state your name and county of residence, and you've got 5 minutes.
Yes, Constance Severy, Knox County, 37914. I thought I did sign up for agenda items Echo 7 and 8, but that's okay because those were two items that was addressing Knox County Sheriff Department getting some money. But of course, as we know, there's an issue. Knox County Sheriff has been involved in 2 deaths of 2 black members of our community, Devon St. Germain and brother David Batts. David Batts' family, if you were here, please stand up so they can acknowledge your presence. These are his loved ones. And as we already know, the issue is that we are not having transparency, nor are we having actual accountability. Now, I know some of you all will sit up here and say, well, I don't have any other say-so of another elected member. But in this particular room, in this particular council, you do, because you hold the purse strings. You are the money people. You are the people that everybody, including the mayor himself, has come here and asked money for. And as we already know, money is power. Yes, it is. And so to me, if we're seeking some type of transparency and accountability from our police departments, especially with the situation of body cam footage, particularly is what the demand has been called for both deaths and both instances of what happened with the police encounters with these individuals and their families, then it is very clear that you all can very well hold that money until the transparency and accountability comes through. This is not rocket science. My goodness, if it was, then we'd all be building rockets now, wouldn't we? So that's the reality. More importantly is that what you're gonna have with Mr. Rashad and the Denounce team, as well as our Representative Damon, is that we're gonna bring forward a petition calling for oversight and accountability. And yes, we are fully aware that the state legislator has passed some things through Elaine Davis particularly. But again, that does not limit your capacity nor your capabilities. Representative Jackson and me, we've had many conversations as I've already given him a book to read, Color of Law. It is something that everyone in this room should read because it breaks down the issues that we're dealing with even today in 2024. I'm sorry, 25. We are actually in the new year, 25. But more importantly, some people will say, well, the DOJ, all these other entities, again, irrelevant because this is something that can be handled right here locally. We need to see those body cam tapes and those unedited documented footages. This little clip that we saw today with Tom Spangle's little press conference that he did is not relevant, nor is it actual factual clearing of any wrongdoing. Meningitis is what has been stated as the so-called cause of death. Well, then the questions will have to start to build now. Well, if meningitis is his illness, then why was he removed from the hospital in the first place? More importantly, why are we not accounting to the fact that he had physical injuries? Is that not a factor to what happened to him? Even with Brother Devon. Again, you have a search warrant, but you served a no-knock warrant. Where's the understanding clarity in these guidelines? Again, these are bottom line, simple, basic things that you as the county commission can oversight, can impose, can press upon, and more importantly, you use the money to be the power of control in the situation. I have yet to understand how we can give money to individuals, to departments who have a historical problem. I'll give you one. Y'all remember Jonathan Berkeley is what his name was? Hogtied and beat to death. Killed by Knox County Sheriff Department. We had to pay $150,000 taxpayers to that initiative. So, Miss Gina, as long as Indy Kincannon, others that yell out that this is the people's business, it is the people's business. This meeting is about people's business. You just spent my tax money on several initiatives on this agenda tonight. That is my business. I voted for some of you all here. So don't tell me when I come to this meeting that I'm interrupting the county's business when my business is very much so what the county is doing as a taxpayer and as a voter. More importantly, again, I need to see accountability. I don't want any of my money going to any department who cannot be transparent and authentic in what happens in an engagement of an arrest. An arrest. You are not the judge, the juror, and the executioner. That's why we have a process called the justice system. That's why I got to go before my jury appears, and then they decide based off of the evidence that's presented by one side or the other if I am guilty or not guilty. But murdering me before I even get that opportunity is definitely not democracy. It's definitely not making America great again, and it's definitely not the representation that I want to see coming from my council or my leaders or anyone else that calls themselves being an elected body or representation of my community and my voice. That is my concern. And so I don't know how to say the bottom line, but we need to see that tape. And you all need to use this money as the leverage you get those tapes. More importantly, stop funding these departments until they show sincerity to serving not just selected communities, all communities. This is Knoxville. All communities, not the ones that you decide is better or less of one another. And the last thing I want to hit on that I heard some things about tonight, y'all said our budget is tight. The city and the county this past year, I think, had $1 billion budget collectively combined. So when we spent money on that baseball stadium, why was that not money used for our eviction court? When we spent money on a bridge for $25 million, why was that not used to develop housing? When we spend money on any of these initiatives that particularly Randy Boyd wanted to spend money on, where was that narrative that our budget was too tight to spend the money on? And I yield the time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Wando Stacy. Mr. Stacy, if you'll give your name and county of residence, please.
All right. My name is Wando Stacy. I reside in Knox County. And I'm here today for the petition for oversight of transparency in Knox County Sheriffs. And once again, this is not me personally. This is the individuals of my community. These are the these are the people that are most affected a lot with what's going on, with what's happening to their families, their members, and their loved ones. So I've handed this out. I don't know if I can read through this in 5 minutes or 4 minutes, but we, the undersigned citizens of Knoxville, Tennessee, are writing to express the profound concern regarding the recent tragic events involving the Knox County Sheriff's Department and the Roger D. Wilson facility. We call for immediate action to enhance oversight and transparency within the law enforcement agencies to ensure accountability and the safety of our community members. On January 3rd, 2025, a community was devastated with the death of an 18-year-old Devon Montez St. Germain, a promising high school student who was killed during a search warrant executed by the sheriff's deputies. Just 5 days later, on January 8th, we mourned the loss of David Batts, who was brutally beaten to death by the deputies at the Roger D. Wilson Detention Facility. These incidents are as numerous. These incidents are as well as numerous incidents in the past have raised serious questions about the practices and accountability of the Knox County Sheriff's Department. We respectfully request the following. Number one, police advisory and review committees. Establish a police advisory and review committee to review the actions and protocols of the Knox County Sheriff's Department and the Roger D. Wilson Detention Facility. This committee should include community members, legal experts, and mental health professionals to ensure a diverse perspective. Number two, public reporting. Implement regular public reporting in incidents involving the use of force, death, in custody, and other critical incidents. This transparency is essential for building trust within the community. Number three, training and protocol reviews. Conduct a comprehensive review of the training and protocols of the sheriff's deputies, particularly regarding the handling of search warrants, interactions with minors, and mental health crisis situations. Number four, body cameras for all officers. Equip all Knox County Sheriff's Department officers across every department with body cameras. Also, we would like there to be repercussions for officers whose body cameras is not active during interactions with community members. This measure will ensure accountability to provide a clear record of indications between law enforcement and the community. Number five, community engagement. Foster ongoing dialogue between the Sheriff's Department and the community to address concerns, share information, and build a collaborative approach to public safety. Number six, policy reform. Review and reform policies that may contribute to the culture of violence or lack of accountability within the Sheriff's Department and the detention facility. We believe the lives of Davon Martin St. Germain and David Batts must not be in vain. It is imperative that we take decisive action to prevent further tragedies and to restore faith in our law enforcement. Okay, let's see. So, actually, I put two of them together. So, Yes, once again, coming from these communities, it's not that we don't have the willingness to work with the individuals, but it seems like so much we come up against the wall of when we're just trying to get a fair shake and be treated properly. And that's all we're asking. Please do us right.
Thank you, Mr. Stacy. The next speaker is Heather Beeler. Ms. Beeler. Ms. Beeler, if you'll give your name and county of residence, please.
My name is Heather Beeler. I live in Knox County. I've never spoken in front of anyone before. So first and foremost, I thank God and I thank you all people and everyone here for listening to us. Our goal is for everything that the gentleman just read from our petition: transparency, accountability, training around mental health, people with special needs, and better de-escalation tactics. Every person be equipped with body cams. Transparency, transparency, transparency. There's no reason for there not to be transparency. No reason. That protects our sheriff's department. It protects the community. So thank you to the sheriff's department, that the people that serve our community, that do serve with integrity. We do appreciate that. I'm here on behalf of David Batts. This man was a husband, he was a son, he was a brother, he was an uncle, he was a father, he was a cousin, a friend, an employee of Knox Area Transit. And he wore many other hats. This man's story starts with going to work on a normal day. He was transported to UT Medical Center from the request of his employer because of a mental health emergency. Then UT Medical Center proceeded to file assault charges because a sick man touched a staff member inappropriately. Knox County Sheriff's Department then transported him to Roger D. Detention Facility, untreated. Then he was returned within 2 hours, bruised, handcuff marks, and swelling. The family met with the district attorney last week, where they was told no footage was available and no further investigation. This family has had 2 family members beaten at the Knox County Sheriff's Facility. Lewis Flack, I do not know exact date, a number of years back, was beaten and won a lawsuit against this. Our cry is for light to be shed and transparency. Again, we do thank the members of law enforcement that do serve with integrity. I've heard this past week, and even here in this building tonight, that our community will be rioting. This is our right. Speaking up here, our petition, and being informed as community members, and voting, and not just generational voting, voting with informed decision. And I, personally, as a community member, will share with my children how to be informed voters. This is how we riot. Please become familiar with the name of David Batts and his story. We as a community will continue speaking up, not just tonight, but until we are heard. and I don't know if I said this already, and I do apologize if I did. These things, with the transparency, they do help protect our sheriff's department and our community members. They do. We're not asking for much. Consistency, transparency, and accountability. That's all we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baylor. The next speaker is Ms. Shula. Did I say that right this time? Okay, good. If you'll just state your name and address for the record, please.
Imani Shula, I'm a resident of Knox County. I'm gonna say the same things you've already heard, but I guess sometimes you have to hear it more than once for it to be received. I'm Executive Director of Community Defense of East Tennessee, where we support people going through the criminal system and helping them come out whole or preventing them from going in. Right now, I'm here to demand that we have increased, again, transparency, accountability for all law enforcement, and also mandating the use of cameras during all interactions with the public. I also want to demand that there are no blind spots in the jail, particularly behind the steps. We've received stories that that is where people are taken to be hurt and harmed. We also demand strict policies and adherence to these protocols. We also demand the humane treatment of family members who have had family members who are victims of police violence. I myself had the Knoxville Sheriff Department burst in, pointed guns at me, and handcuffed with a warrant that was being served on a family member. We all survived that interaction. It was very traumatizing, but I couldn't imagine if one of our family members was harmed and being treated that way. We're demanding that no family member be questioned, detained, or interrogated for the first 72 hours of a critical incident. No releasing of criminal history, arrests, or charges. And law enforcement need to respect the grief and mourning and establish a standard of behavior in treating family members impacted by police violence. Every officer, patrol, SWAT unit, undercover should be mandated to wear cameras, including traffic stop, detention, search warrants. There should be no exceptions. They should announce when they're recording. They should announce when the recording has stopped. These should be preserved and not buried or erased or misplaced and available to the public without barriers. This even goes for undercover officers that we've heard have been pulling over people, searching their cars and letting them go. What they're looking for, I don't know, but why it's not being documented or talked about, there needs to be transparency. When you fail to hold people accountable and your system fails to hold them accountable, the people are the ones who suffer. Far too long, law enforcement has wielded the power without adequate oversight. We should no longer be willing to live in the darkness. If there's nothing going on, there should be nothing wrong with everything being transparent. This isn't about implementing body cameras or just fixing the blind spots in the jail. It's about dismantling an unchecked system that abuses the power and has been doing this persistently for generations. Families impacted by police violence should be treated with dignity and respect, and their grief should be honored and not exploited. Every officer in every role should be held to a standard of honesty, accountability, and integrity. This is not a request. This should be a requirement. I had the fortunate pleasure of meeting Breonna Taylor's sister. She said she's more than willing to come to Knoxville and train our agencies. This is how she's honoring her sister's legacy. So that is open if you are really truly caring about changing what's going on with the citizens of Knoxville. We also will ask that you fully fund HEART. It's an alternative to police that does not include officers with guns. We can save lives if we fully fund this. And all I ask is that you remember Davion and David. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Sheila. Mr. Woods? Mr. Woods? If you'll state your name and county residence for the record, please.
Rashad Woods, Knox County. I apologize. I had to walk my wife to the car.
You're
They
fine.
said you called earlier.
You're
Okay.
fine. No, we come back, we always come back around.
All right. So, good evening, everyone. I stand before you this evening compelled to speak from the heart. However, given the gravity of the situation, I felt it necessary to write down my thoughts to ensure that every crucial point is conveyed clearly. I am here to present a petition signed by 1,333 members of our community, directed to the county commission and the sheriff. This petition was initiated on January the 13th, 2025, in response to the tragic deaths of Damon Montez St. Germain on January the 3rd, 2025, and David Batch, January 7th, 2025. We gather not to debate the guilt or innocence of any individuals involved, but rather to address the troubling reality. The deaths of these two individuals, along with numerous other incidents, highlight a significant concern regarding the Knox County Sheriff's Office. It has become abundantly clear that this office is unable to operate without inflicting harm and, in some cases, loss of life upon the citizens of Knoxville. Our purpose here is to advocate for increased oversight and transparency to safeguard the constitutional rights and lives of our community members. No office in America should wield absolute unchecked power. Accountability is essential. I would like to remind everyone of a statement made by Mayor Jacobs during a town hall meeting at the Morningside Community Center, July 26, 2018. He acknowledged, and I quote, that everyone that works for Knox County government should be accountable. So now the pressing question is, who genuinely desires to enact the change to hold people accountable? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. And I do want to go back around one more time because Mr. Lawson, I called him first. I just want to make sure he wasn't outside. Okay. All right. So that concludes public forum, commissioners. Do we have any other business before us, Commissioner Rawls?
For new business, I'll say. This is a tough time, like, for me. So, one, I want to thank you, St. Germain family and Davis family, because, Bet's family part. This isn't easy. It's not easy for those family members to get up there and speak in front of a group with officers standing at the door. It's Knox County and Knoxville as a whole. Every community is a fabric woven rug, and when you have incidents like this that happen over and over and over again, you get this wearing of the rug. And then you wonder why that there are challenges in certain communities when it comes to interactions. It's a challenge because that frayed rug is not held together with anything. And so it's important for the people on this side as well as that side to fix the fray. And I believe we fix the fray and we fix the rug by what the people are asking for, which is transparency. Because what happens when people are left to their own devices, they think, whatever, I don't know what happened. Well, if you didn't do anything bad, why don't you have? Or how many body cams are there and the rest of this? And so there's all these things and there's this cloud that starts to happen. And I think as a commission that we need to kind of clean up this cloud, and we need to repair the fabric of the community, because I hear from people who are afraid of interactions with the police and with sheriffs, from young to old, and I hear about it. And I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, and I can tell you stories about me and my childhood. And some of y'all would freak out if I told you what happened to me. So I'm saying this with all sincerity. I believe we won't get to all of the questions tonight, but as for new business, I would propose that we have a workshop, a working meeting that's open to the public. And in that working meeting, we can address the questions of how many body cams are there? Can there be body cam footage on SWAT? Some of these things that can't be answered in this room tonight. And we can make a plan going forward as a commission. This isn't a, oh, you're a bad guy, oh, they're bad people. This is a, let's get to the root of it and let's fix the problem as a community. And so what I'm proposing is, again, a working workshop to be held in February with the sheriff, his team, community, us, and let's get some of these questions answered. So that's my new business to the commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Rawls. And I'm assuming that you'll work with the sheriff for,
Yeah, I will reach out.
okay. Do we have any other business? I've got, just to remind the commission that we do have, Day on the Hill, February 18th. So, and our meeting will be the 19th for, our optional review and zoning, and then the 24th will be our beer board and commission meeting. So that changed a little bit, so I wanted to make sure that everybody got our dates on there. Ma'am?
What about, there was something in the paper that, the Knox County Sheriff had recommended, and that it would probably pass, hiring, veterans with less than honorable discharge. Is that going to be addressed tonight?
That wasn't addressed tonight.
Oh, okay, is that going to be addressed in the future?
If it's gonna be on our agenda, but you can always call the sheriff's office
Well, I
also.
wouldn't want to do that because I definitely disagree with that, because there are plenty of honorably discharged veterans that need work. Max Cleveland, who was the former Secretary of State in Georgia, served very honorably, and I think you're jeopardizing the safety of other officers as well as the citizens by hiring, people who have less than honorable discharge anywhere. And if it's in the military, if they have criminal records, then you definitely don't want them in the police department.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that wasn't on our agenda tonight, so, Commissioner,
I think that police officers that go to jail should be serving in the police department.
thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry, you didn't sign up to speak, and I have to stick to our rules of public forum.
All right, but,
Thank you.
one of the public forums, though, was about this man that, that went to jail, and I would say that I don't understand why he was sent to UT Hospital for a mental evaluation if you found drugs at him. Now, I've never done drugs, those people, need to be arrested, and we want our officers to be safe.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we just had public forum on that, and you're welcome to sign up next month if you want to.
As far as hiring, it's in the newspaper, hiring social workers.
You'll need to speak to ma'am, you'll need to speak to the sheriff's office about that, okay? That wasn't on our agenda this evening, but thank you very much. Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to remind everyone, there will be a Budget Outlook workshop this Thursday at 3 p.m. in the Commission Conference Room.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you repeat the dates for our meetings in February?
19th for the agenda review and zoning, and the 24th for beer board and commission.
Was there something on the 18th?
18th is Day on the Hill in Nashville, legislative day. Drew, did you have something, Drew? 2 days, 17th and 18th. I apologize. 17th and 18th is Day on the Hill. Thank you. Do we have any other business before this body? If not, we are adjourned.